All right, so we're gonna start with the application cover page. So you're gonna do your basic contact information in this page, and this is gonna go directly into Amplifon. So you're gonna do your primary contact. The Perkins lead contact will be in the primary contact. And then the secondary Perkins contact will be like any person that has responsibilities concerning the grant, so like the second person. So you'll have your grant physical contact and your general college grant contact. And then also the number of students served, the total number served through Perkins dollars in fiscal year 2023. And no estimated and duplicated counts are acceptable, but please note which are using. Allocation, develop your application using your allocation amount for fiscal year 2023. Janelle kind of already covered that a little bit. And note if there are any changes to the Perkins contact during the fiscal year, you can notify your ICCB CCE liaison, or you can go to the iccb.cce@illinois.gov. I think it was better for you to just contact your Perkins liaison if you want a quick response. All right, so this is how the application cover page is going to look when you put your information into Amplifon. All right, the performance data analysis. So when you get your data, you're going to be using the Perkins data dashboard. And this data is going to be disaggregated by the student population, special population, and it's going to have each core indicator. All right, performance data analysis. So when you do your performance data analysis, there's going to be a table, and it's going to be broken down into 3 core indicators at the state determined level of performance, and it's going to be compared to your actual level of performance. After performing your data analysis, briefly describe existing gaps or disparities in performance for each population. So when you see the disparities within that data, you will talk about that in your application. So only complete the actual level of performance and plus and minus section columns under fiscal year 2022 data. Do not complete the columns under FY23 or FY24 because that haven't been completed yet. You are looking at the past data from FY22 for the fiscal year FY24 application. So for people that are new, this is how the sheet is going to look. So you see here for the FY 2021 data, you are free to put that data, you could put that data in there because you already put that data in there from last year. And then you will be putting your actual level of performance and the increase or decrease when comparing those two into the third column. And then at the bottom, you'll see the question about the disparities. So performance improvement plan. So after this, you'll do a performance improvement plan. The performance indicator, so address each of the underperforming performance indicators. Sorry. If you do not have any underperforming performance indicators, you do not need to complete a PIP. Activities include a minimum of 1 improvement activity for each performance indicator. So you will need 1 activity for the performance indicator if you did not meet that PIP. So identify the subpopulations you will be targeting for each of the performance indicators. That's what you'll be talking about in the target demographics and social special populations that are negatively impacted overall performance in a given area. So also when you talk about the PIPs that were met and in the activities, you please put that in your work plan because it all aligns together. For the resources, specify the amount of Perkins resources that will be expended for the activity. Expected outcome, include 1 expected outcome for each activity. not each indicator. This is different than past year. So must be measurable, must reflect change in the deficient measure. So this is the performance improvement plan, as you can see. So you'll put the performance indicator, at least one activity in that column, and then the Perkins resources will just be the number, how much money you'll be spending in that column, and then that outcomes. Turn it over to Dana.
So I'll talk about the annual work plan. It's gonna follow the format of the application narrative and should be used to develop activities that inform your annual objectives and long-term goals. Develop them FY 21 and can also the last year of this 4-year application. So you'll complete the template, developing at least one activity and providing answers for all subsequent questions. The intent of the plan is to assist you in developing meaningful activities that will realistically enable you to achieve your annual objectives and goals. There's room to add your objectives and goals at the beginning of each section. And if you need more, or however many activities you can just add more rows. In the annual work plan section that you submit and you plan, you won't fill out the quarterly reporting section in your application. Those are for the quarterly reporting date. And so here's an example of the annual work plan, and at the top is the section where you can include your annual objectives and goals. You can do an activity one with the person resources. And then there's 4 subsequent questions. I will add that there were some revisions. Some of my revisions last year were about if the activity was involved with the performance improvement plan. So definitely be sure to fill out yes or no, which one that is. And then also you'll complete the acknowledgement of grant processes. It's our agreement between ICCD and the college that the Perkins administrators, you all have understood the deadlines and procedures for reporting, budget modifications, expenditures, payments, and funding deadlines, and supplanting. Each box in this form on this section will need to be checked and acknowledged as understood, and the Perkins administrator must complete the signatory certification, acknowledging that they'll communicate all grant requirements and expectations to other staff at the college, and certifying that deadline requirements have been read and understood. And here is this is the reporting section, and then the 524 local app. There'll be an amplifying, you'll have this is the couple boxes in this section that you'll check. 147. And I will turn it over to Ann to talk about program studies.
Okay, I'm going to review the programs of study section of the application for you. The first section you'll notice on your application is a programs of study narrative. And I know we have a lot of new admins coming in, but I just want to say this is a little different than the program of study approval that you're also working on. For your programs of study narrative, you have to choose a program of study focus for fiscal year 24 that you plan to submit to us for approval. So when it comes to this program of study focus, you have to make sure that your program addresses all 6 requirements of a program of study. So just to review really quickly, those 6 requirements are: you have to incorporate challenging state and academic standards. You have to address both academic and technical knowledge and skills, including employability skills. Your program has got to align with the needs of the industries and the economy of your state, of your region, of your tribal community, or your local region. Your program has to progress in specificity You have to have multiple entry and exit points that incorporate credentialing, and your program has to culminate in the attainment of a recognized post-secondary credential. So when you think about your narrative and you think about the program that you want to focus on for fiscal year 24, you need to also include a description of like, how did your CLNA inform the selection of the program of study that you chose? And how does it align to your local and regional labor market? You need to give us specific information regarding how your program is going to fit into a specific career pathway. Tell us if it has an industry recognized credential, and also give us a list of any programs of study that will be submitted this fiscal year to us for approval. And then that process is where you're going to utilize the program of study approval form. Okay, the next section on your application is going to be your program of study inventory. So some of you may have a lengthy program of study inventory, some of you may not. You only utilize this section of the application for programs of study developed to date and that have received ICCB approval at the time of application submission. So don't include any programs of study that are currently awaiting approval or that will be submitted after the application. And the information you need to include in this section is the title of your program of study. Give us a list of all your partner high schools. Go through the program of study expectation tool and look at the quality standards. Does it meet all of those quality standards? There's 9 of them. Give us an update on the progress or changes that have occurred since your program was submitted for approval. And again, describe how your program of study fits into a career pathway. So that's what this section of the application looks like. This little table that you need.
Excuse me, can you give us some examples of what you're looking for when you say improvements?
Maybe, you know, do you have like new work-based learning opportunities, or have you maybe developed some program-specific dual credit classes when before you were using general ed classes? You buy any new equipment? Did you make any changes to the program based on feedback from like your advisory committee or your local employers? Did you develop any new partnerships? Things like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so new this year, we've included a programs of study submission tracker. And this helps you and us kind of with organization of your program of study submissions. You can keep track of programs that you've submitted to your liaison for approval, programs that have been, you know, you've received feedback, they've been reviewed. You can keep track of the date you submitted them back to your liaison for revision. And then again, the date that your program was formally approved. And that's what this section of the application will look like. And I'm just going to close out with a few additional reminders and updates. Again, you have to have your programs approved because in order for your CTE programs to be funded with federal Perkins dollars made available under the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, which is Perkins 5, your programs must meet or be working towards the state's definition of size, scope, and quality in order to be deemed a program of study. So again, what needs to be submitted? Whenever you submit your approval application, you need to submit the form. We don't need if you utilize the tool to kind of develop your form, your application, that's great. You don't have to submit that to us. And then you need to submit your supporting evidence in a way that's organized, that makes sense based on your quality components. Evidence files clearly labeled and clearly indicated which quality component it goes with. Like we've talked about in the past, you can either link it in your narrative in each section of the quality component, or you can send like a zip drive or folders for each quality component with the evidence clearly labeled. And if you use like advisory committee minutes for quality component 1 and maybe quality component 8 or whatever, go ahead and submit those twice. That's not a big deal. We're continuing to work through all your previously submitted applications. We've received, over 421, that's just a rough estimate, I know, it's probably higher than that. And about 240 have been officially approved. Continue to let us know if an application needs to be prioritized, just reach out to your liaison if you're needing to spend money. And ask them if they can like bump it to the top of their list. I know I'm happy to do that if you have a program with that, it never hurts to ask. And please be sure to submit your required revisions in a timely fashion.
We have a question online.
Okay, fantastic.
If you do not have any deficient performance indicators and therefore are not required to complete the PIP, you still need to answer the questions in the performance data section.
Yes. Josh?
I have two questions. One, if if we have something submitted and that, can we write in the Perkins app? Then the assumption that it might be submitted, if we're looking to spend funds on that specific program. It's been turned in but not approved. Would you discourage us from including anything benefiting that with Perkins dollars?
I touch base on it and ask them if they can get it read quickly. I know I will get yours. Yeah.
One other thing too, are we still in like a grace period, like if they haven't been funded 2 years prior, they can still get funded without the approval of the program and study or without over and done with, back.
Pay for 2 years for each new program. But most of you are probably nearing the end of that with other programs that have been funded, like in FY21 or FY22.
But if it's not a new program and it's never been funded via Perkins, but all of a sudden they want
Yeah.
Perkins
Then you
money,
get your 2
you still get 2 years? Oh, okay.
years. Now, I mean, if you want to submit it quicker, it's fine. But
Yeah,
yeah, as long as you have not spent money on it previously.
Yeah, over the last 2 years, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
you have your 2 year planning. Yeah,
For the program of study, separate from the ones that we've received approval on, the one that we're writing about,
Mhm.
what if that's under review and we're kind of needing to add to that? If we submit that as the highlighted program of study and it gets approved nearer the time that this is due, does it still count?
is it as your focus?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because right now it's
You
not
might have
approved,
Your program of study focus, we very well could be.
get
a program
approved by
you're
that
also
time,
still
right?
Working on, yeah, it just means you're focusing on it for FY24.
Okay.
You have a need for it in your local area.
Thank you.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be one that's approved. It could still be in the works or something we're thinking about developing to get approved. Okay, that was the second.
Stick to Ample Fund is on the line. They want to present. Nancy, you had your hand up. And then we'll get to that gentleman and I saw another hand after Ample Fund presentation. Okay, awesome. Okay, we can do one more question. then. Who wants to ask a question?
I can. What
Okay.
for the focus, the program of study focus, what if you wrote that in to develop it, but it did not get developed to the point of submission for program of study that year? Does that matter?
You mean, you wrote it in last year?
Yeah, we wrote it in last year and it is not to the point where it's going to be ready to submit for program of study. Is there any, I don't think that matter?
No, I don't.
That in time.
Was it a completely new, like, had you spent money on it before?
No.
Then you should still have your 2 years.
Okay.
So you would have worked on it last year, then you can.
I was wondering if the focus meant that we needed to then have it ready to go by the next year.
Because I would just continue working on it. That's, yeah.
Okay, before Ample Fund starts their presentation, after their presentation, we have a break. If you are in parking lot E, that seems to be the troublesome lot. Brittany went and talked to the parking folks. They were not helpful. But they said if you're in lot E, you might get a ticket. They might want you to pay it, maybe not. I don't know. I won't chance it. So during the break, if you are in lot E, please go move your feet.
Back over to.
More slides about the budget. You guys don't want to be here for 5, so.
So for the uniform budget, you'll complete the set expenditure categories that are allowable for the federal work plan. There will be something new that I'll talk about in just a second, but you'll have to cross-check your budget with your annual work plan. We definitely recommend doing that so that, you're ensuring that all Perkins funded activities are briefly described in your budget. And then above are the 10 expenditure categories that you use in the uniform budget. So you'll still complete the uniform budget spreadsheet, and you'll enter the work plan activity number, and then below provide a brief description narrative for each item. And then something new that will happen this year is the completed uniform budget spreadsheet will be uploaded into Amplify. And then you will also complete the application, but budget you'll also enter it into Amplify. Using section A and the section A indirect tab, you'll enter the estimated expenditures from those tabs into the uniform budget expenditure categories in Amplify. So that is something new. And so the top bullet is the 10 expenditure categories that are allowable. And I'm just gonna highlight that these other expenses are for construction activity, research and development, telecommunications, and direct administrative costs. They are not applicable to the federal post-secondary grant. So you do not enter any expenses into that, and that's gonna be something that is different this year with using the Amplify budget. And with that, then we're ready to turn it over to Amplify for their other presentation about how they're going to solve this.
Okay. Can I get one more thumbs up that you can hear me, see my screen, potentially see my face? I see a thumbs up. That's super helpful. Thank you. All right, so what we have on the agenda for today is to do a walkthrough of the Perkins application in Amplify Fund. First off, thanks for having me on the line today. I appreciate the opportunity to present. My name is Jillian Naumeister. I'm the team lead for the state of Illinois. The big focus of what we're going to do today is logging into the platform and walking through an application submission. I know a lot of you are familiar, having done this in the past. We'll recap some of the pieces that you've done before and maybe spend some more time on some of the added pieces that are happening this year within the system. So the general flow for today is making sure we can get to the opportunity. You need to be able to log into the opportunity, hit that apply button, and then we're getting into the application itself, where there's a project information page to complete, application forms, which is going to be very similar to what we've seen in the past. And the big change this year is going to be around the budget entry piece, because this will translate to some of the post-award components. Our big focus today is getting applications smoothly submitted into the platform. Maybe we'll show a little bit about the post-award, just some highlights, give you a little bit of a preview. Again, big focus is on just getting these applications submitted, and we'll have the opportunity to do some more training later. We will wrap up though with some of our customer support pieces. If anybody is really gung-ho on learning about the post-award functionality, it's there. We do have a grantee training series already available on our support site that anybody can jump into. So from here, what I'm going to do is I am going to switch to Amplify. Actually, just switch to my Google Chrome. Do we see the GATA system on the screen at this point?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So from here, this will be the fast navigation point, because I do think everybody's pretty familiar with what's happening. A wide variety of ways to get to the application. One of the easier ones is to go to the GATA grantee portal, go to the CSFA. We can look for current funding opportunities. Any of the opportunities that you're going to be submitting an application through Amplifund are going to be highlighted with the green GMS at the front of the URL. If we scroll down, the Perkins grant is going to be down here at the bottom with ICCB. we can go ahead and click on that link. It just makes sure to remind you, you can save this or you can directly apply. When we do get to this point, you have the ability to view the entire application. You can save the application, you can download the application prior to starting it. So this is the live opportunity that we have. In the interest of not submitting fake information, I am going to be working in a test opportunity at this point, but the essence of what you'll see is that you will have an apply button on the top right corner of the screen. So I'm not going to apply to this, so I'm not logged in correctly to do so, but you'll see print, help, download, save, and apply. When you do select that apply button, it will take you to the single sign-on portal. Really, you'll have to enter your credentials to log in. This pulls a lot of information from the GATA grantee portal or your existing grantee account to be able to then populate an AmpliFund. When we do have that button where we have applied for it, we have the application is now open. So if we're looking at this application, we can see there's a navigation toolbar across the top of the screen. The opportunity details will go over the project information, forms, and budget. This is where we are going to spend the majority of our time looking at today. Looking at the opportunity details, this is all information you should be familiar with. I know some organizations or some community colleges have already started their application because this has been live for about a week. But everything you're looking for in terms of summary information, things that are on the historical NOFOs are going to be available on this page for you here. Some things to highlight as you get going in this. I'll address customer support a couple of times, but if you are having technical issues with the platform, unsure of how to upload a document or something is happening when you're trying to submit, reach out to the AmpliFund customer support team. You can shoot us an email. Do try and get it in before that close date comes soon so we can provide the correct assistance. At the bottom, we have additional information, which includes a listing of how to essentially view the training that we're in right now. So all of this is going to be available to you here. Once you do apply for this, you will have the option to save and continue. As we start progressing through the screens, you're going to see these options change to save, mark as complete, and save as continue. There's differences between each one of those buttons, and we're going to want to make sure that we are applying for it. So when we get to the project information page, all of these fields should be blank so that way you can enter some information. In the interest of time, I did start this application ahead of time, so you don't have to watch me type everything in here. In terms of using AmpliFund, there's some simple rules to follow. The first being anything with an asterisk is going to be a required field. So the first field we have here is your application name. Tri-C is my local community college, so that's what I'm acting on behalf of as today. Tri-C Community College, our award request, we're looking for $300,000. There are match or in-kind contributions or other funding contributions on this page. I defer to ICCB for if any of these nuances should be complete. As we go through this, there should be primary contact information that pulls from your grantee record. If not, complete the required fields at the bottom of the screen. Now, looking at this, we have a save, mark as complete, and save as continue. Once you're confident that all required fields have been answered on a page and they've been answered correctly, you'll want to mark each form or page as complete. When we get to the end of the application, if any of these forms are left incomplete, you're not able to submit. There is a little reminder on most of the application forms for you to hit that button. If you're working on it, it's a work in progress. You can always save or save and continue to the next screen. I'll use the save and continue button at the bottom here. What this is going to do is it's just going to take me forward through this progress bar at the top of the screen. The next section we have is our application forms. So these are all of the traditional ICCB forms. These are ones that you filled out in the past. So if you were the one submitting, last year or the previous year, this should feel fairly similar. As we're going through it, a lot of these have that download and upload. So you're going to download a template from ICCB, fill that information out and re-upload. The biggest difference is going to be our application cover page, where you're entering basic information about your community college. So again, just in the interest of time, I did enter some of this in advance. But as we see here, we have required fields. So anything again with an asterisk is going to be required, which is almost completely this entire page, I think. So we have our community college name, the upcoming fiscal year, the number of students served previously, and your upcoming fiscal year allocation. We're going to enter in your primary Perkins contact information, name, title, telephone, email. Same with our secondary Perkins contact information. It cannot be the same person, but you can use this as you see fit. The grant physical contact, again, asking for the same information. And then towards the bottom, we have a general college grant manager. Just again, same questions for different contacts. I intentionally did not fill out this entire page just so we can show a quick validation error message. So if I come down here, I do want to mark this as complete. It gives you that little reminder to do this. If I try and mark it as complete, I'm going to get a validation message in the system. This is saying, hey, you haven't filled out all of the fields. Go back and fill out those fields. So you get the red box on top. Additionally, if you can't figure out what's not complete, there is a message next to that field on the screen. So as you're filling this out, it should be pretty simple to understand what has or has not been completed. Once I enter this in, I can then go ahead and mark this page as complete. Once this has been marked as complete, you get that success box on top, and we just go forward through all of our forms. This is where there might be some ICCB feedback. I did hear when I joined the call, you were actually answering questions about some of these specific forms, so I won't dive into the forms. The general business flow here, though, is really straightforward directions. Download the attached form, read instructions, complete it, and re-upload it. So we can download that just by clicking on the box. It'll download to your computer. You can do whatever you need to fill out these forms. And then when you come back, you can choose a file. I've already uploaded one here, but it opens up whatever your last file upload folder would have been. Pretty standard file upload. You can pull it down from whatever you have on your desktop or shared files and upload it to the system. There are fields on these pages that are not required. If there's additional information, there's additional areas where you can upload multiple documents as needed. Once this is complete, again, you're going to mark it as complete and you're going to save and continue. Programs of study, again, a similar context where you're going to download this folder, download this file. You're going to then complete it, upload it again, choose that file. You should probably choose the correct file. I will choose a lovely Amplifon support document just so you can have that listed here. You should always see it right here. If there is an issue, you can delete and go forward. We're going to continue through this application form. I think there are 1 or 2 files here that we're interested in looking at. So this page here is our annual work plan. I think this is the file outside of the budget that probably has the most notes around it. I think this is specifically what you were talking about when I joined in. With this annual work plan and quarterly reporting template, it's a Word doc. It's similar to what was entered last year. I think I already had it open, or a different one that was open. The key that I know ICCB has referenced is that there's a minimum of 1 activity per area that needs to be filled out in this template. So as you're looking through this, each one of these needs to be filled out prior to submitting it. I don't know if I should pause if ICCB has any, color commentary on this particular form or how they think it should be completed, or if we're fine to continue.
Go ahead and continue, Jillian.
Okay, cool. So same concept here, where we are just going to continue to upload those documents after they've been complete. Mark is complete. Looking at progress for this, it tells us at the top that we have 6 application forms. Annual work plan is 4 of 6, so we're getting close to the end of this piece. The last one that we have is uploading acknowledgement of the grant processes. Easier one to submit something for here. Another beautiful Amplifon user guide will work for me for today. And then the next one that we have is going to be our budget. So the budget is where there's sort of two full pieces that are happening this year. The primary being you're going to need to complete the full post-secondary uniform budget Excel file. So I know there's a lot to that file. We'll want to complete all of that information here. Same concept though, where we are just downloading it and then uploading it back to our computer. I'm going to see if I can, I think I have one open on my screen. As we're looking at this, what's important to note is what takes place in some of these categories. So section 8 is going to be one of our important categories because this is what's going to be used to enter into the next page. So everything is going to, work as it does, where information is going to populate here. But these fields here, these are going to be available to us in the Amplifund budget template. So I think this is the new functionality that wasn't used in the past. What we're going to do is we're going to take this information and we're just going to populate it onto the budget template. So after you've completed the detailed version that's required, you're going to upload it. Trying to scoot that over. Same thing we've done where we're uploading that completed 24 budget. This page has a second file that requires upload in that signed certification. I think somewhere there's a 24 budget in here. There it goes. So we'll put our completed 24 budget in here. I have it open on another screen, so we'll just put someone else in here. I have everything open on another screen. If you're still in the midst of a file, it's a safeguard that Amplifund doesn't want you to upload it at the same time in case you haven't saved it out. So those little pop-ups that say it's already in use are actually helpful to make sure you don't have something open and unsaved on your computer and then you're submitting an incomplete draft. I think for this one, the next thing that we need to sign is that signed budget certification page. Once everything on here has been complete, same process as we've done where we're marking as complete and we are going to save and continue. The budget area is where we're going to take that information that was just entered into the workbook and we're going to start to populate into our budget page. For those that are familiar, it's the Uniform GATA budget that's been in existence. It's really the same information that's in that workbook, but we're going to enter it a little bit differently in here. So might be a different format, but we're asking for the same information. So it should be fairly easy to populate. To give you some quick navigation around this, I added a couple of categories just to get started. To add new line items, like if we are adding travel under this budget, which I believe is one of the allowable costs, I would select the plus sign next to travel. So I can click on the plus sign here. It's going to give me a nice pop-up where I can enter in some of the details of the line items. So here, if I have something that's going on, I can add in the name of that travel item. This is expenses for folks. Maybe this is conference travel, or maybe that's its own line item, but I can enter that in here. I know that this is going to be something like $21,000. Nah, that would be a great travel, not $213,000. I think we all want to go on that conference. Let's go. We'll just put in here, it's a quantity of one, it's one trip, and that's going to populate into these items below. So if you did have something where we were saying it's one item, it's 2 trips, you're going to see that added up in the direct costs and the total budgeted. So we can leave it at that. That works for me. Couple trips this year. This narrative, you should be including any information that's in here. I will tell you right now, future state Amplifund, this is going to be a mandated required field. So I just encourage you to enter it at this point now, because it was requested by the state that every budget line item has that narrative addition onto it. As we're looking at our budget, previously I had entered the personnel items. I do think this can be one of the more confusing line items. You can add in, I think, generic personnel, but if we are adding in a services position or something like that, as you enter it in, I know you have the requirements of the specific individuals. I'm just going to say that this is a $50,000 employee. They're paid annually. This is half of their job. So I'm going to put in 0.5 here and a full year. Amplifund is going to do a little bit of math and say that's $25,000. So the key parts of this: percentage of time, always enter it in as a decimal. Length of time, 1 equals a year. If it was half a year, we could put in 0.5 and we'd end up with that $12,500 below. So Amplifund should be calculating that total direct cost as a percentage of salary times time times duration. Again, enter your narrative description here. And then once that's ready, we're going to go ahead and create. I have not been mathing this out as I go, but if I look down towards the budget, we can see the total expense budget cost right now is at $200,000, about 200 grand right here. We've requested $300,000. So if I'm trying to figure out how much money I have left to enter into this budget, again, just some validation activities that are happening. This $300,000 is pulled directly from what was entered on that project information page. So I entered $300,000 up front. It is now validating against my budget later on. To make all of our lives easier, I think that we have probably spent a lot of money on supplies this year. So we're going to hop to supplies. We're going to enter something like $74,400. That's a name field. So you want to enter the supplies into the right name. Cost, it's one really big supply. Entering that in here. Again, add notes in that narrative field and create this line item. That leaves me with what I can pretend is a nice round number for those indirect costs. That is one of the other fields that was requested that was entered in, I believe. I'm just pretending that this has that perfect calculation where indirect is exactly $25,000 to give me that balanced budget. So let's see if I can get this to math correctly. We're going to go with a 1 for my rate. Anything else that needs to be in here, you can add in a file as required, and we're going to go ahead and create. Now that I've added that indirect cost line item, I can see the individual line items here or the summaries on my category level under total budgeted. My expense budget, how much I'm planning to spend is $300,000. That lines up exactly with my grant funding request of $300,000. While it seems silly sometimes, total overall budget cost, we want that to be a net zero. It means we're balanced out. I haven't been watching chat or Q&A, but I do want to pause here and ask if there are any questions on completing the budget template in Amplifund. I do think that this is new functionality for the community colleges this year. I love that the camera kind of spins around the room so I can see you all. I don't think there are any questions at this point, but you can feel free to use like chat or Q&A. Okay.
Jillian, we do have one question in the room. Go ahead, just speak loudly.
So as we're entering, and let's say there is an error. Let's say we're entering May 5th, because it's due on May 12th. If there's an error or missing information, are we able to go back in to modify?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we can save and continue. I have this set up in a way that I could enter multiple budgets. Let me pause real quick. Actually, I'll just do it. So you can save this and come back to it in a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. I'm going to just close out of this so we can see I copied the URL. You can do it either way. You're actually going to be navigating from here because I'm using a fake opportunity. I can't use that same link, but you would just click in here. You would log in the same way that you had previously. Again, I am cheating because I saved that here. I'm also probably logged in. If you did come back to this, what'll happen is you'll see the apply button again. If you hadn't logged in yet, something like that. If you click on the logo that's in the top left corner of the screen, mine says Amplifund. We could probably change it to ICCB if we want, but this is going to show you all of your existing opportunities. So if you have any applications that are open, click on that logo in the top left corner. It's going to take you to your list of applications. I'm working on behalf of Tri-C today. We had submitted another test stop for a different opportunity. All I have to do is click on that application name and it'll take me back to exactly where I was. So as long as you save your progress along the way, which there is that save button at the bottom of every page, you can always come back to it and submit ahead of the deadline. I actually think that's a really good way to make sure you're validating things. I saw a hand go up.
Second question. So once we submit, so I've completed the application, fully completed and submitted. Now I get the actual budget amount. How do I then make those changes?
How do you make what changes?
So it's the budget, so we're working off our FY 23 budget amount. So this is what I'm entering in. Once we get the actual FY 24 allocations, if there's, hopefully there's, and we get more money, then how do we make the changes in Amplifund?
I can answer that, Jillian.
Right.
So you will have your allocation by the time you submit this into Amplifund. Unless you're submitting it tomorrow, then you will not have your allocation, but I do not think any of you are gonna be submitting it tomorrow. Hopefully by mid-April, you'll have your allocation. So that should not be a problem unless you're like really being a go-getter about putting this into the system. And if that's the case, you can just make a change to your budget, like Jillian was. Yeah.
Unique question, and I know that I would do this. Have they considered that I have 7 colleges, or am I going to throw into one budget for the district?
So I think the last year you did one,
Every year I'm only able to do one.
so you upload one budget.
Right.
And then you, oh, I see. For the summary,
Correct.
so. Yeah. So I would do it at the district level. How are you going to be submitting your budget modification request?
There's the million. There's gonna be there.
Individually?
Individually.
What about your quarterly financial reporting? Do you do it individually?
So we get it individually, but when it's submitted to the district, I have to submit it as one.
Okay. So I would continue, I would do what you have been doing.
Okay.
So upload the budget and you're gonna have each of the colleges have their own
Yeah.
color, right?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the summary portion is going to be at the district level, just like a
I just have to
big
identify
snapshot.
it.
Does that help, Maria?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a preferred browser or one browser we should not use with the application?
Do not use Internet Explorer, but no one should be using Internet Explorer because Microsoft stopped supporting it. I use Chrome, Fire, and Firefox every day with Amplifund. Edge also works fine. I don't have like Apple products besides my phone, so Safari also works fine. I don't use it ever. Do use a computer. Don't try and do this on your cell phones. I think that's the biggest. I've used Amplifund on Chromebooks. It works, but I always get a little confused when people are doing complex budgets on their phones and then call us for help. And I'm like, that seems like a challenge. So just use a computer. Whatever browser is like the most recent and up to date should work fine. Okay. Just to hop to the end of this, If you look at the menu across the top, check, check, check means those are all complete. They're marked as completed. The budget is not. There's no check. You can tell what page you're on by, it looks like the little target here. If I have to submit, I'm going to intentionally throw another error. When I try and submit, it's going to tell me I have a form that is not complete. It's suddenly thinking about it. Let's try that again. There it goes. So the budget has not been marked as complete. So if you are filling this out and you get some sort of error, the applicant portal tends to be really good at telling you where something is missing. There's those validation messages as well as go back and mark this as complete. Even when you're doing this, you're not able to mark as complete until it balances to 0. If we took away a line item, you would see that here. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and mark this as complete. I will save and continue. And then I should be able to submit. So we're on that page. Everything looks good. If you want to review, you can always review. You'll download a whole application package, but you do need to make sure you hit that submit button before the deadline. There's an application submitted successfully message that'll pop up. In addition to that, there is an email that goes out that basically says application submitted. Right now, I'm drawing a blank on if it is the person who submits it or the person who's listed as the point of contact on your grantee record. Either way, email goes out, it says application submitted. So you do have confirmation that goes through. I'm not entirely sure how it's happened in the past in terms of any negotiating or back and forth that's happened. If maybe somebody starts to review it and there's a missing file. If anything takes place where maybe something is reopened and it's requested that you resubmit something, again, that same person is going to receive an email from Amplifund and it'll say your application has been reopened. If ICCB adds in a notes that say like they'll open a specific page or all of the application forms, they can have notes over what is in there or what needs to be resubmitted. All of that will come through via emails that just say what's happening there. Trying to open up a sample submission email just so you can see it. But my Gmail is going a little slow at the moment. Okay, here we go. So just so you can see what this looks like, up here, application submit success notification, hi, you're receiving this because the applicant has been successfully submitted on this date and time. So you should feel comfortable once you receive that something has been formally submitted into the system. So I don't know where that's going. Okay. Last up, just because this is a new year and there's some new functionality that's coming, we're not going to do a full-blown post-award demonstration. I will show you real quick what this looks like on the post-award side, though. So let's say everything goes good and smooth. You're awarded, everything is over here. I'm willing to bet I've been logged out because it's been a little bit of time. So I'm just going to see if I can log back in. There we go. I have secret login because I am not an agency user. So I'm logging in right now on behalf of a grantee. You go through the typical single sign-on process. Amplifund is different from the applicant portal to like the post-award side. It has a different look and feel. There should never be any question of whether you're submitting an application or you're on the post-award piece. This is generally speaking what it looks like for the grantee or recipient side. Pretty easy to navigate. On the left, there's going to be a nice menu that tells you your grants, your activities. This activity section for reference, if we do have anything that's like a quarterly report that's coming due, you would start to see these populate on your calendar after they've been set up. For me, I can go to grant management. I can take a look at all of my grants. And it's going to show me the whole portfolio. So if, I'm pretend Tri-C today, if Tri-C gets a ton of grants across the state, you would see all of them in one place. I'm a little bit of a cheater, meaning I just like to make my life easier. There's 97 grants in this account. I know that the community application, apparently Jillian's fave grant 14 is also here, but the community application is my favorite grant. So instead of navigating through the 100 grants in my system, you can just really simply favorite that one particular grant that you're managing, and have that displayed. When the grant details page does open, there's a little star in the corner that you can mark as your favorite. So if you make it as your favorite, it'll pop up under the favorites menu to the left. It makes navigating around the system a little bit easier. From here in this community application, again, post-award side, I can see what's already happening. I can see this particular one was grant funded. There was match. Here's my total budget. Because expenses are being actively managed, you see in live time where things stand. So this is helpful to see, but what we'll take a look at is the post-award budget. So whatever you submitted and is agreed upon on that pre-award side, you'd be able to see in your submission information over here. So I'm not sure if you can, if it comes to the applicant portal. You can, but on the post-award, we just navigate to the budget side. This is where later on we might be doing like some of the expense entry, or potentially like in big picture Amplifund across the state, there's payment requests, payment authorizations, integrations with the state financial system. Luckily, you don't have to worry about half of that stuff, but you do want to know how to navigate through your budget. If you're adding expenses, you can do it from this screen. Later on, if there are things like budget modifications or amendments, those can go through the platform as well. This is not a post-award training. I just wanted to give you a little bit of highlights of what's to come. There's a lot of ways to make navigating around this side easier instead of scrolling through all of your grants or all of the pages. Some of what we can do is like favorite your analytics page. Every award is going to come with this analytics page. And as you start using more post-award functionality, like, you know, putting in some of those annual work plan goals or actively using the budget, using reporting periods, this dashboard starts to populate. It says, I have reporting periods due at this period of time. I've spent this much money on my budget. I have this milestone goal coming up next. I haven't clicked on this in this browser ever, so it takes an extra second to load. But this is another page where if this is my favorite grant, this is what I do and what I manage, I can favorite this one, or I can set this page to be my specific home page. So I log into Amplifund and I'm taken directly to this page. All the pretty pictures are going to populate on the bottom in a second, but it's basically like budget to actuals, upcoming milestone goals. It'll have upcoming items, like if reporting periods are coming due, maybe quarterly reports, you're going to see that like September 30th or October 15th or whatever that is. You'll have a budget tracking item up here. Never seen that error message. I'll check that out. But looking at this down below, you can see like actuals entered against the total budget. Probably need to spend a little bit more money because we're real low on this, but it's just a nice visual to get you in to Amplifund, and the more you use it, the more you're going to get out of it. So I'm sure that we'll come back to this when post-award really gets in full swing. To wrap up the presentation for today is a little bit on customer support. I'm doing a lazy way sharing my slides because I remembered I did have this open. If you have questions, whether it's in the application or later in post-award, send us a ticket. This email address is listed in the applicant portal. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to send a ticket. Our support hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Central Time. We have somebody who will answer the phone, they'll email, you know, whatever you need. If you need to hop on a Zoom because you can't figure out how to mark something as complete, we'll help you out. For our supported browsers, it's really just this is old. I said, don't use that one. That's gone now. Chrome, Firefox, Edge, all of those are going to be helpful. For the support site, you do have to create your own user and password. This is a separate platform. It's not part of the single sign-on. It takes you just a minute to do that. But once you do, I'm going to take you into the support site. There's a ton of features that are available here. Grantees has a special section It'll walk you through like the whole application submission for sort of a generic application. It'll take you through single sign-on. What I recommend though, if you're looking to get ahead under upcoming trainings and videos, we have a section in here that is essentially like the grantee post-award training. So we can scroll down and Amplifund grantee recipient series, you know, some of the post-award stuff, how to log in, new user accessing the system. Later on, when you're wondering post-award, how do I update this or submit that? There's quick videos for all of those features just available to you in the support site. And if you're doing things and you have questions, not on this page, but everywhere else, oh, I can't do it because of my role in this, but there's a submitted support ticket at the bottom of most of your pages. So you can enter us a ticket from within the platform, from within the support site, email, phone call, all of it. That's everything I have for today. Are there questions from the group or ICCB? Anything else I should dive into?
You have a question here in the front room.
If we have a new administrator, when it comes to logging into Illinois.gov, should we try to use an existing institution account or create a new one? And if we create a new one, will it pull over that information?
So that's more of how they're logging into the GATA grantee portal and it goes through there. So if you have your community college already has I'm assuming you would already have an organization record in there. So you're just adding new users to that page. By adding a user in the GATA grantee portal, Amplifund basically goes there to pull in their user information. So you don't have to subsequently add them into Amplifund as well. Do it in the GATA portal. I think it probably is new since last year. There is an option to give somebody access. So when you're creating that new user in the GATA portal, I'm pretty sure there's a checkbox that says like, yes, give them Amplifund access.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And
Are we using Amplifund for budget modifications and quarterly reports as well?
So you will not be using them for your quarterly performance reporting. That's going to remain the same within your annual work plan. For your financial reporting quarterly, yes, that's the plan, is to use it. And I believe we will be using it for budget modifications also. But we'll tell you guys all that. We don't know 100% right now, so we'll let you know.
Thank you.
that's where, if you're interested in what it looks like under this upcoming training section, I scroll too far, award budget, entering expenses, things with reporting periods, those are like the potential long-term ones. I'm sure that we'll be doing another training, whether it is live or recorded, is going to be kind of up to ICCB, but we'll make sure you have the tools you need to complete the activities within the system.
Does anybody else have any questions for Amplifund, or you had a question over there about programs of study? You raised it now?
Yeah, just. You remember the question?
No.
How do we determine, I mean, as far as a program of study focus, I mean, how do we determine that? I mean, is it? How do we select it? What's the benefit of doing that? I mean, what's that? That whole process, what's the purpose? Required, based on your CLNA, you know, what's needed in the area, or what, you know, helps you to determine what program of study you're gonna focus. This is one you're gonna be working to develop during the year, and then submit to the ICCB. So everyone is required, every year, you're required to be focused. That is mentioned in this important.
Nothing all through.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah.
So, as we're doing programs of study, so we align them with our 1.6. So 1.6 of those credit non-transferable programs, and all of our 1.6s have industry certification. So it leads to, or they either gonna have industry certification or transfer into a certificate or degree program. My question is when it comes to funding. Can I use Perkins funds for my 1.6 since they are part of program study?
So the whole, as long as it's part of that program study. The program study are those stackable credentials, so as long as they're in the program of study, then.
Then I can, okay,
It's in the course sequence.
I'm sorry.
It's in the course sequence.
No. Remember 1.6 is outside of, so their credit program that are credit transfer, then there's 1.6, which are credit non-transferable. These are the ones, so they're industry certificates. So say if I've got students that want an A+ certificate, they may already have a master's or bachelor's degree. They're coming back to get a certificate. So they can go into a 1.6 class, do 6-8 weeks, get their certification, go off, do and work. However, there's also a pipeline which they can do that and then go into a credit program to earn the college credential for a certificate and for a degree. So my question, because they are 1.6, because they are credit non-transferable and they are career track programs, can I use Perkins funds?
We'll have to get back to that now.
Okay.
I don't want to give the wrong answer.
No,
I want
that's
to be able
fine.
to think about it,
That's fine because
because we've never been asked that question, so.
no, and my 1.6 person is like, well,
That's a great question. That's a great question.
okay.
Yeah, we'll connect. Yeah.
Good, just something just out of curiosity, so with this type of structure that you're talking about, I understand they're getting industry recognized, but are you awarding some type of short-term certificate that has 1.2 designation, or is it simply a 1.6?
It's a 1.6 is only 1.6 designation, 1.2 that's a different designation. So they theoretically can earn both.
So
They
I
can
asked,
ask
so like the 1.6 typically be tied to a short-term certificate, and we call it a degree code 18, right? But if we're not seeing any of those, so it might, I'm just curious if they're only getting the industry recognized credential and not the certificate of college. Is
And
that-
that's what that's what we're trying to do. How do I show that as well? Because they can, what they're getting, if they transfer, if they go into we'll just take CIS, if they go into an IT course and they're getting that IT as 1.2 designation. But I want to, and we can show that, you can see that, but I want to be able to show you the 1.2 and the 1. So add that to the list when we. Okay.
Okay, if anyone has any other questions for Amplify, I want to thank them so much for presenting and providing us with this information.
Thank you. So, as most of you know, Perkins required that the disaggregated data is collected for each of the performance indicators by special populations. That's one of the categories that it needs to be disaggregated by. And we know that collecting special populations data can be a pain point. So we want to just provide space to have a discussion at your table about just some of the challenges and opportunities around data collection. There's the worksheet in your folder that has questions. So the way this is gonna work is that we'll go through each of the questions. You're gonna write your responses. Think about it for a second, write your responses to the questions on this form. This is for you to keep. We also ask that you write your responses on the Post-it note. Each table should have Post-it notes. And then we're gonna have corresponding, the large Post-it sheet with each question. Stick your Post-it note on that. That way we can kind of collect the information, give it back to you as a resource. So you can have some of the different challenges that other folks are facing, some of the solutions that we've kind of discovered. And this is just a discussion amongst peers. So like I said, we'll share these back with you as a resource, and also this is gonna inform, we'll look at what your needs are, and this can inform future professional development, so we can provide you all with the support that you may need for special population data collection. So the first
question to think about is, how do you use the data captured for your special population in your role? So whatever your role is, at your institution, how do you, are you using it only when it's time for the application? Are you using it hopefully to develop activities, in support of the different special populations? So, just think about and write your responses for how, and discuss it at your table amongst each other. Like, how do you use, the data in your role?
Go ahead. The second question is, how are you going to determine whether data is completely clear and already?
Like Janelle said, you have all the questions on that sheet in your packet, so just be thinking about them. Continue to talk to one another about them during lunch, whenever. Some of the discussion will inform, any questions you might have for Jay and Michelle when they give their presentation after lunch. So lunch is directly outside of the door. Some of you are already nibbling in the snacks here in the back, but that's your dessert and your drink, so please make sure to get that as well. We will eat, get our food, and then Amy and Brittany from ICSS will give their first film update. So
I'm going to just go through some upcoming professional development to make you aware of. I'm gonna move this little guy. There, or there. So good afternoon. Director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. So welcome, everyone. Again, there's still more lunch out there. This is just going to be a little tidbit of information coming regarding your professional development that's coming up, and then we'll let you get back to your desserts and your drinks. So welcome to UIS. You came all the way up and around, discovered over lunch, you can literally go right out and down the hallway and take it outside. Awesome. With me today is Brittany Boston. I'll let Brittany introduce herself.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Brittany Boston. I am the Associate Director for Equity and Outreach at ICSCS. And so a lot of my focus is Perkins and special populations and all that entails.
So we have a few events planned for the next 3 months, and we wanted to walk through those with you today. And all of this, if you're not familiar with Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support, we do invite you to check out our website. This is what we do. We were founded in 1977. We create support, deliver professional development for the career technical education system, for the adult education system, and also we partner occasionally with that workforce development system as well. So we will talk about the WEO Summit that's coming up. We are the people who bring you the Forum for Excellence in partnership with our partners at SIPDC down in Southern Illinois. And then in addition to that, we have webinars and professional development and all kinds of other fun stuff that we do. Our focus is always on access, equity, and transition around supporting special population students. So when you're looking at your special pop students, or if you need support within special pop students, let us know. We are happy to help. I know I've done some trainings for different colleges over the years, and actually just a few weeks ago. We do a lot with growth mindset, universal design for learning, those areas where we can help you better support your special population students. So.
And really quickly, so we're going to go through this. You'll see there's a lot of links to registration. I already see some people taking photos. We will share this PowerPoint presentation out. I'm going to harass Jay and get his slides from him too. So we will share all of those out on our ICSCS website. We have a Perkins Administrator Cohort page. So all of that information will be shared there. So please don't feel like you have to get everything written down and together. So one of the things that we are doing this coming spring, we've done now, I believe, only 3 or 4 cohorts of the TIPS. So TIPS is, and yes, I am looking at the slide for this, training on instructional practices for post-secondary success. And so these, if you have been through it, or if you have had any of your faculty go through it, wonderful, great. Please feel free to email me and share your experiences. But it is an LMS system with modules that it's pedagogy and training on pedagogy and universal design for learning and equity in the classroom, whether that is a physical in-person classroom or a virtual classroom. Shanna Shipman is someone that we work with who has kind of helped put this together. She is we call her the facilitator for the TIPS cohort. And so past cohorts have been fully virtual. With this upcoming spring,
There we go. So what this is designed for though is if you have faculty, a lot of times our faculty at our community colleges, which are phenomenal faculty, they come to us from business, right? They come to us from industry, they don't necessarily have that pedagogical foundation. This is not going to tell them how to rewrite their curriculum. What it is going to tell them is give them some tips, strategies, some techniques that they can use to implement universal design, to be better at engaging with students, to really that application of pedagogy to their classroom instruction. So everyone who's gone through it we did a pilot and then we have the 3 cohorts. It's continuous improvement. So if there are input, if there is information that you go through it and you say, oh, you know what, I think it needs this. We've been very responsive to the system, but the system has liked it, really engaged with it so far. So we encourage you, if you haven't heard about it, check this out.
yeah, and it really is designed to, we've had people participate in the cohort. We've had people do it separately on their own. We've had institutions do it within their own institution and their own group as well. So it really is customizable to your time and workload and what you are able to commit to. But if you are interested in taking part in the spring cohort, or even if you just want to hear from some of the other programs that have participated in it, on April 25th, we are doing an in-person kickoff to the spring cohort. So the first half will be some of those participants who have gone through sharing their experience, what they've learned, what they've taken back into their classroom, how they've implemented some of the strategies that they've learned through these modules. And then that second half will be kind of that kickoff to the spring cohort. You'll meet Shanna, she'll share information about the modules, how they're set up, what it means to be a part of the cohort. And then 3 weekly virtual meetings. So we have the dates on there. They're all dates in May, and each meeting will go through the modules within TIP and more of a conversation of, okay, so we're working through universal design for learning. Are there questions on that? How are you thinking of implementing it within your institution? What are some strategies or information that you feel might be missing from the modules that you want added in there? If you have any questions or concerns on how to implement some of the information, that's really what the cohort conversation, I believe we call it TIPS Tuesdays conversation, are all about, kind of just walking through and bouncing ideas off of people that are doing the work, similar work, boots on the ground that you all are doing. And so registration for that is open. It's on our website. And again, you will get the slides for this because all of the links are on there. But we even have a tips page on our ICSPS website. So if you want to find out more information, you want more information on Shanna, her background, and why we chose her to do this, she's got a bio on that page as well, and you can get more information there.
Everything we talk about today is going to be on our website, which is ICSPS.illinois-state-university.edu. And all these sections also have separate spots, so you can search our website to find them. The next one is supporting the spectrum. So if you have students within your classroom or on your campuses that are on the spectrum, this is a 8+, which is a project of the State Board of Education that's at ISU for the K-12 system. Our project, which is the Autism Training and Technical Assistance Project, and then Autism McLean are all partnering together. Wednesday, April 26th from 9 a.m. to 3:15 p.m. We are going to put on a hybrid conference, really looking at how we support the spectrum. So we are going to feature some post-secondary institutions and what is being done there. There will be stuff for parents, there will be stuff for community members, there will be stuff for the K-12 sector as well. If this is something that you're interested in and want to attend, registration information will be coming out soon. And if you're not part of our newsletter, we do a monthly newsletter. That information's in there as well, but everything is on the website.
And if you've ever received an email from myself or Amy, I don't know if you have it in your signature, but in my signature line, I have a subscribe to our ISU newsletter publications or something along those lines. And so if you click on that, we have it designated as workforce information, DTE professional development, Perkins, and you can kind of pick and choose how you want to hear us on information that we're leaving.
And this is a grant that it's the Autism Training and Technical Assistance Grant, but we also, with ICCD, really want to share this information out. We have written into our Perkins grant as well as into that grant that we partner between those two projects. We have every month on Tuesday that, I believe it's 10 a.m., we have a webinar on the Portland project. So in April, we're going to talk about neurodiversity in the workplace. May 9th, we're going to talk about partnering for transition. June 13th, we're going to talk about parent support and having that idea that when students come to post-secondary, they need to let go. So letting go as you move your students into post-secondary. And then July 12th is sexuality and the spectrum lesson on sex, dating, love, autism style. Every presentation that we do is recorded. It's available online on the Autism Training and Technical website. And again, you go and check all that stuff out, and it's fantastic and it's free, and that is that website right down there.
Yeah, so we have a poverty simulation coming up. It is May 10th. It's from 10 to 2:30 in Bloomington at the YWCA. So there's the logistic information.
It is an in-person only event. You cannot do a poverty simulation virtually.
So I don't know if anyone has participated in a poverty simulation before, but what it is you will come in, we're going into the gymnasium and the YWCA, and they have areas set up. So like a DHS office and a school and a daycare. And then when you come in, you are given a persona. And there are different things that go along with that. Maybe you have kids, maybe you're just got laid off, maybe you don't have kids and you have a full-time job. Yes. So different characteristics that you then take this persona and you walk through, I want to say maybe it's a month-long time span within an hour and a half, kind of living in that life and what ups and downs that individual faces, what supports they need to get access to, how, if they can get access to those supports. And then they do a debrief afterwards to kind of break down some of your takeaways, the experience that you had in going through this simulation. And then we'll have some ICCB share out later that day. So with this is kind of a timely one. We've been sending out some registration for it. However, in order for the facility to prepare, registration has to close by April 10th. So if this is something that you are interested in attending, please register as soon as possible. I will be sharing it out again. I know a lot of colleges were on break last week, so I kind of took a break there sharing it out, but I'll be sharing it out again this week and next week. I'll be loading it into your email every day until April 10th, because it's only 100 slots. That's the maximum number of participants that we can have for this. If you have any questions about this or any of the upcoming PD, feel free to send Amy and I an email, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you have regarding that.
And the one thing I neglected to share is the Autism Training and Technical, back to that, sorry, following, is designed for individuals who are leaving the K-12 system and entering into post-secondary or entering into the workplace. So that is why it fits well within our niche, and that is why we have really taken that on and partnered with ICCD and ISDE on that project, because it is really looking at how individuals who are on the spectrum leave secondary and then enter into your campuses and how to better equip faculty for that. Poverty simulation is amazing. If you have not partaken in it and you have economically disadvantaged students on your campus, you should check this out. It is a great experience, very jam-packed hour-and-a-half training. Then there is a debrief, and then we will also have some additional reflection with ICCD on staff. So if you are interested, please register. We will serve you lunch. I have no idea what it's going to be, but it'll be fun. Pardon me? Yes, everything that we do is, well, except for this one, sorry, everything that we do is free besides the Forum for Excellence and the WEO Summit. I'm gonna move on to the WIO Summit, because we're not done yet, guys, there's more. The WIO Summit is coming in May 11th and 12th. It is a hybrid format conference, the Embassy Suites in East Peoria. So if you haven't been to the Embassy Suites, they have a lovely river outside, so well, we're going to East Peoria, right, ICC? Registration is available on our website, and this is for those of you who work with your workforce partners. We are getting together, talking about service integration, system integration, what that looks like, what's important about that, how workforce is supposed to be hanging out with and partnering with the CTE system, because you are kind of the big catalyst that they all talk about. They're going to be sending their students to your programs. You're referenced a lot, probably in rooms you're not aware of, but if you're interested, please attend, because the CTE is an integral part to the WIOA system, and you are well represented by ICCP, but I do think if you have time and would like to attend, please do. It is a 2-day conference. We are hoping to have Governor do a welcome, and then Juan Salgado from City Colleges, your chancellor, is our key. He's going to talk about the way in which the workforce system is integrated with the education system, and then also some of the issues that not only Chicago, but the state has faced. So yeah, Rosa, here's
Yeah, so we have a civil rights review facilities training coming up. This is very specific population, but you all should be working with this population for your facilities on your campus for that civil rights review. So I'm sharing it with you to help me get the word out about it as well. We are looking at Wednesday, May 24th, 10 to 3 p.m. at Heartland. This is an in-person meeting only, because what we will be doing is we will be giving kind of an overview of the OCR guidelines and facilities and what's allowable, the laws that go behind it, and then participants will actually be taking and breaking into groups and looking at Heartland's campus and looking at the parking lot. Well, look, we have a lab that is reserved, so we can look at the lab and how that is set up and is it accessible to all students. We will be looking at bathrooms. We'll be looking at, the stalls, how the toilets are set up, the elevators. So we will actually be doing a deep dive into facilities and what is required for your campuses, what is required for accessibility purposes, for students, for staff. So it will be an all-day, in-depth training. We're really looking at getting, facilities directors from the community colleges. I think we could probably also open it up to.
So all of you are welcome to attend if you have the time and are willing to attend. But it's designed for facilities individuals, so those people who are maintaining your facility to be aware. A lot of these things, for example, the poverty simulation is something that we haven't been able to do through the pandemic, and now we're able to do. The TIPS training is something that we started right as we went into the pandemic. We piloted in winter of 2019, went into 2020, had this great idea that we're going to do all those in person. Well, the world flipped upside down, and so we have done all of those virtual. This is the training that we did back in 2019, in September of 2019 in Joliet. And so we're doing it again in 2023 and really getting people aware, because now we're coming back to campuses. We have students back on campus, and we want to make sure that we don't have issues with facilities and violating our students' rights.
Well, and the intentionality of this too is in years past, ICCB as well as ICSPS have done on-site civil rights reviews. The way in which those are happening are changing. And so ICCB and ICSPS as well want to make sure that we equip you and your institution with the tools and the information that you need in order to make sure that you're meeting the needs and the demands of your students and your staff. And so that's where this is coming into play, to make sure that facilities is given the training and information to know about accessibility and what that looks like in a classroom, on campus environment.
So we've made it all the way to the end of May, and now it's June. June 8th, we have 9:30 p.m. is the WEI Symposium. This, I'm telling you about this. Those of you who are involved in the Workforce Equity Initiative, you will be bringing teams of like 5 to 7 individuals. Those of you who are not involved with the WEI initiative, each campus will be allowed to invite 2 individuals from your campus to attend. There's an opening reception for 4:30 to 6:30 on June 7th, and then We will be on June 8th at the Embassy Suite all day. Again, that is a really fun-filled day talking about workforce equity initiative, what has happened, what has been happening, how that's going to continue, all of fun, great, exciting things. Just a little snapshot. More snapshots, because we're not done with June yet. Each of your campuses has housing and opportunities that are useful for students' excellence. I love this acronym, House Liaison. With your House Liaison, there is going to be a House Summit where we are going to bring all of you, well, all of your House Liaisons together, and really whoever wants to attend, June 29th, 9 to 3 p.m. at the ISU Alumni Center. We're going to be talking about how to support students who are homeless, find themselves homeless. What is the law that supports them? There are going to be 4 webinars between now and that time. We'll be sharing that information out. The webinars are April 11th, April 27th, May 9th, and May 31st, looking at not only what does it mean or how does homelessness present itself at the community colleges, then moving into what does the law say, what can we do about the law, then moving into one of the populations that seems to be overwhelmingly present in homeless individuals, which is the LGBTQIA population. So you see quite a few of the LGBTQIA populations presenting in with homelessness. So what does that look like? How do we support those students? And then we're going to have a fantastic summit and talk about all these wonderful things that are happening on campuses. And also food insecurity is also part of that as well, because food insecurity does couple itself with homelessness quite often. If you're interested in this, mark your calendars. Registration is coming. You are the first hearing about this. So hot off the presses, as they used to say. But this is going to be a very exciting summit to really address that issue that has been very present. And again, if you're not familiar, homeless is a special population, so it is also very pertinent too. And that does take us through the end of the fiscal year, but we're not done. Forum for Excellence, our fantastic, most amazing conference of all time, will take place this year from September 21st to September 22nd. We too are at the Embassy Suites. Does anybody see a theme? It was not pleasant. So we moved these two areas. Go back to normal. Request for presentations is out. You are all doing amazing, innovative work. Please share your amazing, innovative work and submit a request for presentation. If you don't, we're going to come down to you and tell you, hey, that amazing, innovative thing you're doing, come share it at the conference. We're looking at data accountability, partner development, service integration, equity, and the application of DEIAB, so diversity, equity, inclusion, access and belonging, apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, competency-based education models and success. ICAPS highlights implementing a mental health support and student staff. This is a conference that we partner with, as I said earlier, our lovely partners with SIPDC, which is our adult education partnership. Some of you like to wear both hats. We too dance in both spaces. So we're looking at programs and processes and wonderful things that are happening in both the adult education and career and technical education space. The deadline to submit a proposal is April 21st, so that's not all that far away. But please send in, share with us, or we'll come stalk you and make sure you submit. Present for us, because it's a great conference. But mark your calendars for that. That is a Thursday, Friday. And then the pre-session to that will be the fall PAC meeting. So we'll all be getting together in East Peoria to join in another time when we're talking about the permanent administrative cohort.
And the theme for the 2023 Forum for Excellence is CPAE Stronger Together. So career, technical, and adult education. We, in years past, the forum has focused on, partnership with employers, within your institution. But the reality is the forum came together to showcase the partnership between CTE and adult ed. And so we kind of have a back to the basics approach with the forum, because you do have amazing partnerships and resources within your own institutions. And it's always nice to just be reminded of that and to take time to network with each other, with other programs, see how they're working together, and know that, we are one big family. Maybe that'll be our theme song, is we are family.
We are here. I will not be singing. So any questions? All right, thank you for your attention. We could wrap up like getting your lunch in order and then day starting promptly and.
I need you guys for just one thing. There is yet another organization here. So one thing that, we have been told is that there's not been a lot of, it's a good place for everybody in post-secondary to live. So, I am the president of the new, Illinois PACE, chapter. It's not to be confused with the PACE that's used in, the secondary framework. It's post-secondary adult and career education. And, so essentially we are a sub-branch of the, Illinois Association for Career and Technical Education, which is a sub of the National Association for Career and Tech Ed. And so most of the states are getting these chapters started, and we got ours started back in February. And so we are pretty new yet, but what we are trying to do is we are trying to provide that space. I heard a few people say there's a lot of new people in here, and so one of the things is the network is what's going to help all you new people be able to share ideas. So who we're looking for is we're trying to get people to join in every area of post-secondary CTE. So we've got one of our board members is a adult ed person. One of our board members is a faculty member from College of DuPage. So we are also, then we've got a Perkins representative. We are trying to bring in all areas of CTE in the post-secondary realm together to offer professional development in places like the forum, the Illinois ACTE conference. So we are in the ground stages this year. We're planning, we are now accepting membership, which goes through the Illinois ACTE. We had a flyer, but it didn't get printed today. So that's okay, but we'll, I got to tell you guys about it. So that's the main thing. We're still pretty new. We have a website I just created, but it's not, right now it's still got the placeholder showing you where to join. It's just ilpace.org. And so it's pretty easy to remember. But basically, anybody that's in post-secondary that has anything to do with CTE, we are forming a space for all of you guys to come together. We're gonna probably do some monthly get-togethers virtually as well. We had a session at the Illinois Career and Technical Conference in February, and we heard a lot of feedback. A lot of post-secondary people said they wanted faculty to be tied into this stuff more. They wanted professional development in that area. They wanted professional development in new teacher areas. They wanted professional development in creating apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships. And so we're trying to cover everything in post-secondary from recruiting all the way through the workforce. So anybody that is in post-secondary, again, people are getting it confused because PACE is what they use at the national level. So we have to go with that name, even though Illinois has already chosen PACE for the framework for careers for K-12. So the two things are separate, but we are post-secondary adult and career education. And get in on the ground floor, help us plan what kinds of things you guys want to see. And like I said, we will be at a variety of these conferences trying to do, we want to serve the members and see what kind of professional development or networking opportunities that you guys want. So like somebody said, you know, the value of the network is the key here. So when you're new and you're getting started, everybody's got great ideas here. This is a good place for us to all get together, share ideas, make new connections. And PACE is going to be behind that for post-secondary in Illinois. So I do have a few business cards back at my table later on if you want to come by and grab them. But otherwise, ilpace.org. And I am Brian Rick. Like I said, I'm the president and I'm at Southeastern Illinois College. So if you're interested in joining, get a card from me, or we'll also be putting things out. We're working on a master contact list, and Tasha's been helping us with the ICCP as well. So we're gonna be sending some things out to try to get the information out. But we're so new, we didn't have a fancy slideshow yet. So, but you can get in on the ground floor and you can help us rate what you would like to see. So I appreciate it, and great to get to know some more people here. And hope you guys have a good rest of the day here.
Thank you.
Send that flyer out with all the material, so it has a link on there, but also with a QR code.
Yeah, we can bring it up on the website.
So about 10 minutes.
So in about 10 minutes, Jay's gonna start, so everybody can get fresh and situated.
As I was saying, good afternoon. As I introduced myself this morning, I see some faces in here that are familiar, but a lot of new faces. My name is Jay Brooks, and I have been at ICCB for a little over 15 years now. I work in the Research and Analytics Division. I want to give a shout out here to a team member, Michelle Dufour, as she works very closely with your IR staff. So a lot of the data that you see that we're going to be talking about today is sharing. She plays a lead role in reviewing that data, making sure it's accurate, working with the IR teams and making sure that the data we have accurately reflects your colleges. And I say accurately reflects because I never leave a Perkins meeting where folks don't tell me this isn't quite exactly right. So hopefully today we can help you guys make that connection, bridge what we get and maybe what your IR folks are reporting to us. And if there's disconnects, because we were talking at the table here, I think sometimes what happens is in the Perkins shop or in the adult ed shop or in this division, you guys have data that doesn't always make its way into the MIS systems. They get fed to us. So we want to try to make sure that we help you know when you go back how to communicate with your IR folks and make sure that that data does get fed to us so it accurately does reflect the program. So just by a show of hands, I'm out of curiosity, how many of you have been in your role in Perkins for less than 2 years?
Wow.
Okay. So how many 2 to 5? Kind of right around it. Okay. So I mean, lion's share of folks have been, looks like a big number, less than 2 years. So for some of you guys, this will be some of the first time that you've seen some of this. I want to tell you that for those of you who've been, how many have been around for longer than 5 years? There's some folks who've been around for a while as well. So one thing I want to say is as we've been looking at Perkins data, especially as it relates to Perkins 5, Perkins 4 was all spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. We've been looking at ways to sort of repackage that data and make it more interactive and make you be able to sort of analyze your program locally. It's been an iterative process, so we're not quite there yet. There's some things I'm going to show you today in terms of some redesign that we've done, but there's a lot of things going on sort of under the hood that we've not pushed out yet. That's going to be coming out soon, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I just want to let you know that we do incorporate feedback both from our CTE colleagues and from the field as we sort of think through these redesigns and the kinds of things that we want to do and push out so that you can analyze your data locally. Okay. So with that being said, just in that hour or so that I have, hour 15, there's 4 things primarily we want to touch on. I want to give you an overview and understanding of the Perkins 5 reporting, how it works, how what we push out on behalf of you is reflective of that submission process and working with your IR teams. We also want to talk about the have you leave here with an increased understanding of the Perkins 5 definitions, measures, special populations, and reporting timelines. We did make a couple of changes for those who saw some of the initial Perkins dashboards. There was some confusion about the way that we were tying it to the whole of your reporting group instead of the reporting year. So we did make some adjustments there to sort of address that confusion. We're also going to take a look at some of the most recent Perkins 5 reporting. Typically, historically anyway, we would have reported Perkins data sometime in October, November to federal officials. And COVID really kind of threw things into a tizzy here in the last couple of years. This year, it was actually not due until January 31st. So I sort of anticipate moving forward, we'll start to go back into that November timeline. But this year, that's part of the reason why things have been a little more delayed than usual is the federal reporting deadlines were different the last couple of years. And then also some updates that we've currently already pushed out on PODS 2.0, and then some updates that we have planned to be pushed out in the next 2 weeks prior to the allocations coming out. So, okay, so just high level, we're not going to go deep. You guys, I know you guys are not, you don't work in the IR shop, so we don't want to go too deep into the IR stuff. But as a sort of a matter of the way that things work, our division in research and analytics, we collect data from every community college, both some of it's summary data, some of it's micro data where they actually submit for each student various data points. It could be things like special populations, but a whole host of things well beyond that. This is well beyond Perkins. But our division is responsible for pushing out a lot of different reports, everything like annual report, data book, Perkins dashboards, adult ed data, all of that comes from research and analytics. Some of you may have heard on the radio this morning, we just recently pushed out a report. We had for the first time in a decade, about a decade, a 7% increase in community college enrollment from last year. So that's good to see that we've had that kind of a big jump, and hopefully we're starting to sort of turn the curve from COVID. But we collect this data from the IR, and we go through a very laborious process of going back and forth and reviewing data and making sure that, okay, here's what we see, is this right? And we basically, the colleges have to sign off on it before we finalize it and begin to use it to run reports. We have a long-standing, what we call the MIS manual, which is sort of our Bible of data variable, where we outline everything that we're collecting for every submission, whether it's for students or for faculty, whatever it might be. And we spell out exactly what's to be included and every element that we're going to collect. And then we also, when we start pushing out reports, we slice and dice the data in a lot of different ways. We disaggregate all different kinds of things, from full-time, first-time, Pell recipients, information on MAP students by race, by ethnicity, by gender, all those types of things. And we have I could spend, we actually have spent an entire session on nothing but just the kind of reporting products that we push out from our division. Specifically back to Perkins now. So, and I know I saw in your handouts from earlier, you already had some of this information related to the Perkins measures and baseline data. And what we're just coming out of now is FY22 data. So as we start looking at PODS 2.0 and some of the things I'll show you, you'll see that this is what we're looking at in terms of the most recent year. This would have been things that ended with the prior last academic year. So I'm going to just kind of real high level glaze over the next few slides, and then we're going to start going into taking a kind of a deeper dive into how we actually operationalize the Perkins definitions. Okay, so for the post-secondary concentrator, so we report really two things to federal officials. We report a Perkins participant, which is just anyone earning at least 3 hours in CTE related activity, but the thing that drives all of the measures is concentrators. And there, it's more tied to they have to earn it. That's an important thing to distinguish. It's not that they have to be enrolled, it's they have to actually earn CTE credits. Okay, so if they don't earn CTE credits and they're not in this recognized, recognized program of studies, they're not going to get pulled in. The only exception to that is this second part where we look at the Perkins definition allows us, if you have an individual who completes a short-term certificate and it doesn't take 12 hours to get there, it's CTE related, we can report that, and that's part of what we also do. There will be some things that I throw out here like AC. You guys are not familiar with that, but that's okay. You don't have to know it. All you need to know about it is we, in addition to that student level record that breaks out all the demographic, bio information, all that kind of stuff. The course submission is a record of every course that every student takes at the community college that is credit bearing. So whether it's 1.6, 1.2, it doesn't matter. Anything that's credit bearing activity, we get that course. And we use that course. This was a big shift from old Perkins 4 to Perkins 5, is we actually use that submission to look at student course taking behavior. Okay, so in that way we can make sure that they're actually enrolled in CTE specific courses. And then just kind of high level here, the 3 measures. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because we're actually going to dig into each one individually. But we start with 3T1, and this is just your non-trad rate. We've updated that. SIPs were updated in 2020. And so prior to that, we were using SIP 2010 taxonomy in the non-traditional list. We moved over to SIP 2020 right around fiscal year 1920, somewhere around there. That's what we're using now to determine your non-traditional enrollees. And 3P1, when you look at the anything related to PODS or anything we push out, 3P1 is always the most recent year. Like when we look at PODS 2.0, it will be your FY22 students. Now, one thing I do want to sort of distinguish here, because I know sometimes you guys report to other, as colleges, you report to other entities on things. The data that we get from colleges is not real. So we're not getting something every night or every week or every month from you, okay? This tends to be annual, virtually everything is, there are some exceptions, but virtually everything is an annual submission. So when you get to the end of the reporting year, we collect data. One exception might be the fall. We get a file that's just fall activity. But we don't have a real-time connection with colleges where we're getting this information updated on a daily, weekly basis. But this 3P1 measure is your most recent year. And what you'll see as we start looking at Perkins is you can take your 3P1 group and follow them across time. And that's what we're tracking to see what happens into 2P1, see if they got a recognized post-secondary credential, or if they're successful there, we then follow them into 1P1 to see if they went to gained employment or if they continue on in post-secondary activity. So this group, FY22, what we just reported, we'll be tracking them throughout 22 and 23. And then they'll get reported later on. There's a lag. This one, there's no lag, right? So as the data comes in, we start packaging and pushing it out. With these two groups, there's a lag because we have to wait that second year to see if they've completed. Like if you got someone who's in maybe an associate CPE program. And then also there's a lag because of the way we match wage records with Illinois Department of Employment Security. So there we have to wait, like for the group that we just came out of, there tends to be about a 3-quarter delay before wage records are available for matching with post-secondary records. But so these two, both 2P1 and 1P1 have a lag. Now, in terms of that conversation that you have with your IR folks, as you start to dig into your data and start looking at pods 2.0 and you start looking at the new sort of thing we're going to push out here in a little bit, if you look down this list and you see, let's take, for example, single parents or maybe individuals who are English learners, if you start seeing numbers, either no number or really low numbers, you can go to your IR folks. What we've got here with this slide is this is the measure, right? This is the store. It's the A1. It's just our shorthand for it's basically our annual submission. That's the most comprehensive submission that we receive from every community college. So if, for example, let's say you're at Kishwaukee, right? And you see that you think you should have English learners there, but you look and there's none coming through. You can go to your IR staff and say, you know what, in the A1, item 23, what are we doing there? They should be able to tell you locally how many individuals they are coding as English learners. So this page is kind of your cheat sheet for going back to your IR folks and saying, if you look and there's any special pop that you're missing, right here's why. Because it doesn't matter what you know in your division locally, it only matters what's getting fed up to your larger MIS. But use this shorthand and they can then dig into it and tell you, here's what it looks like. And all of your IR staff are very familiar with this and they know it very well. Yes.
You might be going into this later, but in the last slide, you talked about figuring out employment of tracking and so many of the ICTV documents we have to fill out or program reviews or whatnot. Everybody wants to know, and rightfully so, you know, where are they working? Are they working in the field and whatnot? And I know a number of community colleges struggle to get that data just because of email addresses and whatnot. But you have that data.
Well, it's tricky. Everyone hear his question in regards to employment. It's tricky in that we have some of that data, but wage data doesn't reside with us. It resides with IDS, and we can match under certain agreements. Now, one thing I will tell you guys that this is something that's just happened over the last few years that was really a really nice value add back to your colleges, because your colleges now, every IR shop has access to 2 people, and usually they leave it to the IR staff to do because it's not an easy system to manipulate. But we do have a thing where we take all of the completers, not just Perkins, but anyone who completes, and we match that data and your college IR staff. It's called the college, and they can go in and they can look at the 6-digit SIP level of any academic year and tell you how individuals did in terms of their earnings and how they did in terms of retention with the same employer. We could do an entire afternoon session on justice, but just so that you know, that does exist. Now, part of the issue that we run into sometimes with IDS, I've had adult ed folks tell me this, Perkins folks tell me, they'll say, well, can we see how our students are doing? Can we see how they did? Yeah. There's a lot of stipulations on our agreements about what we can disclose in terms of earnings. We can summarize things.
Yeah.
But when we start getting into a certain number, like usually it's below 10, we have to start suppressing data, sometimes 5, depending on what the agreement is. Okay. But there was, yeah.
So this is mostly self-reported data, so like I handle our special pop survey, but we found that data from our special pop survey doesn't always match our student management system. So we need to reconcile those two before they get to you on this.
That is the perfect way to sum that up. Here's what happens. You've got all this data sitting over here, and we call it data Valhalla, right? We've got this sort of perfect environment, but there's something blocking this pipe where it feeds into your MIS system. And somehow, like maybe they're pulling for the MIS system, maybe they're pulling from a student intake. But you guys are doing things where you get information more, maybe as things progress in the year, you have ways of updating that information. And sometimes it might be setting in a separate data system that's not talking to your college's larger system. But when you see that kind of stuff, what can really beef this up is if you say, okay, we have this data, and then let your IR and your IT folks say, how can we make the connection so that we can update it? Like one good example, city colleges, we had an IR meeting, they were talking about this, how, they were looking at ways at better reporting homeless students. And instead of having sort of that initial check-in, like how can we check in at different times of the year so that if a student, maybe they weren't homeless when they first came in, but later they are, how can we find that out and then update their record? So to your point, exactly that. If you know that you have it because you know what the numbers look like in your division, but for some reason it's not making up to that MIS system, have that conversation, say, okay, we have this data over here. How can we connect it so that we can feed it into the system that comes up at once? Because, we are reliant upon you guys in terms of the IR, the colleges to tell us, yes, this accurately reflects our data, that kind of.
I had one question regarding protocol. For example, the example you used was the English language learner. And I know that most IR departments are, tracking to see if the student was enrolled in a English language acquisition course or something like that. What is the protocol? When do they stop becoming an English language learner? If they took a English language acquisition course 10 years ago, are they still an English language learner?
So here's the both good and bad thing about that. What we tend to always do is we tell colleges, when in doubt, to follow, whatever your historical procedures are for identifying those students. Now, if you determine, like to this gentleman's point, if you determine that there's been a problem with the reporting and it hasn't been accurate, that means that you're basically sort of like, okay, we're not going to do it the way we did it historically. So now it's time to sit down and say, okay, how are we going to define it? And English learner is defined within Perkins language. So, somebody maybe, 20 years ago, maybe was learning the language, that obviously wouldn't apply here. Just like if someone, I think a question came up from one of our IR, the person was homeless 3 years ago, and now they come into the college, we still flagged them as homeless. No, but some of those things you have to operationalize at the local level. And then the key is to be consistent from year to year so that you have ways to compare it across time. Okay, all right, so let's now move in. I said we're going to kind of high level this thing first, and we're going to go into it more deeply here. So I think this is sometimes where folks, some confusion sort of seeps in here. Everything derives before we start to look at the success of any measure in the concentrator. And we look at two things. The first one was the student's declared major or their completion in a CTE program of study, and the student earned 12 credit hours in a CTE courses during the academic year. Now, I've had folks tell me, wait a minute, you're not just looking at their declared major, you're looking at their completion. I can't tell you how many times we look at a student's declared major and then you come over and you look at their courses and what's happened. How many times does the student change their major, right? And oftentimes what we see in the declared major field, sometimes it's reflective of actually what happened. But sometimes what happens is the student starts pursuing these other things. They don't ever come back and change that declared major. But we can look, the way we look at it is a declared major is aspiration, right? That's maybe initially why I came to college. That's what I wanted to pursue. But when you start looking at the completions part, that's not aspirational anymore. That's actual behavior. That's what they're actually taking, enrolling, and earning. So we look at both of those. That way, when we cast our net to say, okay, what kind of CTE activity is happening? If you had someone who was in a like a baccalaureate transfer program, but almost all of their activities CTE related. If we didn't do that, you guys would not get credit for that. And I think that was one of the complaints under Perkins 4 is we had folks who were being missed because we were not looking more specifically at that. But when we do that, we do couple that with, I was talking about that AC or that course file, they have to earn, not enroll, they have to actually earn 12 CTE hours in the academic year. If they don't earn 12, doesn't matter, those other two things don't matter. The only exception to that is this second part here, right? So we do have individuals who earn we call them degree codes like 30, 35, 40, basically what they are short-term certificates, under 12 hours. And we have, and I know you guys have many students who will earn that. If that occurs, even if they don't have the 12 hours, they still get pulled into your concentrator group. Yeah.
My only concern on your method too is we have some AAS degrees, so they're occupational, but they're all 1.1 courses. So for example, our Associate of Applied Science and Architecture, all those courses are 1.1 in nature. That's a degree program. Are you not capturing that completion?
That would take us back to method 1.
But they don't have 12 credits in
Okay, so if they don't,
1.2 because they're all 1.1 courses.
okay, so if they don't have, so they don't have 12 hours in CTE.
No, they won't.
And did they earn a certain, so I know a lot of times you guys do these stackable things,
No,
right?
it's just
Okay,
applied
so-
degree.
Yeah, if they're in a PCS 1.1 and they do not earn any kind of certificate and
But
they don't.
their program is 1.2. They're in the Associates of Applied Science. So that
So did they-
architectural degree is a 1.2 degree. The coursework that's contained within is all 1.1 courses.
Not counted. Yeah, because they're not, unless the.
Then what do we
courses-
do?
But here's the thing, if you are enrolled in a program and it's a CTE program,
Yeah,
and you're not taking CTE courses.
no, but they are CTE courses because they're still culminating in that CTE credential, which is an Associate of Applied Science and Architecture.
Yeah.
And so if you're not giving them credit because the coursework happens to be 1.1, because at the same time, there's a transfer pathway for those students.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a second. I think you're adding something into this, but
With the one, if they want for 1.1.
Sure. But I mean, that's the way the college did it. It's been a degree on the program for over 25 years.
okay,
But in the past, it was counted, that's what I'm saying. Because
we'll
the
come back to that in
methodology
just a second.
is-
Let me see, I think she's adding something here.
Requirements, while they're doing that, we're not gonna have 12 hours of CTE, even though they're on track for their CTE certificate and degree. But they're not going to be 12 hours in CTE because there are general ed requirements that they have to take in order to get that degree.
Okay, so here's the thing, okay? If their declared program, let's say is, a 1.2, but they're not taking any 1.2 courses, right? They're
Accounting
taking-
is a similar way.
Yeah, they're taking general ed. Maybe year 1, we don't catch them because they didn't get the 12 hours. But in year 2, at some point, they got to start taking CTE courses to get a CTE.
But I would say that's false. That's a
Yeah.
false assumption. It's not how the curriculum looks.
Well, I'm just
I'm
saying
just
how.
saying yeah,
if you've
I'm just
got-
saying now that those people are not being
Yeah,
counted.
they are not, but I would say this, if you have students in any kind of AAS program that is a CTE, a terminal degree in career and tech ed, and they are not taking any CTE courses, that's something that we probably need to look at. I would
Because
say.
there's at least 3 that I can think of off the top of my head.
So setting that aside for now, okay, hopefully I didn't open up too much of a can of worms. I'll come right back to you in a second. Okay? But. Yeah. No, it is not. Just ICCB approved. So if like here, they did not have 12 hours, so we look at method 2. If like, let's say, for example, you're doing a CompTIA certificate. A lot of colleges are sort of pairing that CompTIA certificate with some type of a college certificate, right? And that's how we would pull it in, but if it's just CompTIA and nothing else, no. Right. Here's the thing about these industry recognized certificates. We've done some things to try to test ways of better collecting that information, but there is not a central repository where we can go and say, whether it's for manufacturing or for, it's basically, company or whatever that certification is, it's them specifically. Now, the National Student Clearinghouse, you guys familiar with? Okay, so the National Student Clearinghouse has been doing some work about potentially creating a kind of repository of those industry recognized credentials, but that's still in, I would say, infancy, toddler stage, something like that. But it's, that's where we're at. So, but anyway, once we've determined that they are a concentrator, that individual meets one of these two definitions, then we plug them into 3P1. And once we plug them there, then we track them for the entire sequence through every measure. And what you see in 3P1, you're going to see later go up 2P1, 1P1, evaluate how they did. Okay. So this is a flow chart. You guys have this. So if these conditions are met, then we move down to 3P1. And we use the non-traditional SIP 2020 from the Perkins Collaborative. They put out a updated non-traditional crosswalk. And we just use that crosswalk to say if a person is in a SIP, 6-digit SIP, that is non-traditional for their gingers, then we count them as a non-traditional enrollment. And that's basically, you can kind of follow this flow chart. And then when we take, so for example, when you look at pods right now, you're going to see FY22, 2P1 and 1P1. That is students who were 3P1 students in 20. Right, so we follow them for 2 years, plus the time needed to match with IDS, and then we show their results. But there is that time lag. Again, 3P1 has no time lag. And then with 2P1, we look at everyone who was in the 3P1 measure. We follow them in their initial year plus 1 year, and we look to see if they completed a CTE certificate within that 2-year time frame. If they did, then, and all this comes also from your A1. Again, in addition to all the other information that's in the A1, it also has markers for the types of awards that students are earning, whether it's short-term, long-term, associates, any of those types of things. And then your rate is calculated by looking at the total population that was in the denominator for 3P1, and then of those, how many earned a certificate or a degree. If so, then they're counted as a set. And then finally, for 1P1, what we do is, so let's make the math really simple. Let's just say that you had 1,000 students in 3P1. That 1,000 students is going to show up in 2P1. And let's say that we look and see how many of those 1,000 students were successful in earning a certificate or degree. Of those 1,000, let's say 800 got a certificate or a degree. We're going to take that 800 and move them into 1P1, right? Because we're saying of those that were successful and earning a certificate or credential, how many then do one of these two things? And that is how many are employed 2 quarters post-exit, or how many continue on post-secondary. So like if maybe they decided to pursue education at a university or something like that, we would capture that. And either one of those are counted as success. And we do the employment, to get at those wage records, we do an employment match with IDS using their UI wage records, their unemployment insurance wage records. And then we do our post-secondary retention, that 2 quarters post-exit, by looking at student enrollment across, not just in Illinois, but across the country through the National Student Clearinghouse. And just to kind of to sort of conceptually think about the way this works. Right? So like I said, we just reported FY22 data. And for FY22, 3P1, that's academic year 22. That's what we just came out of. It's, as recent as we have. And then for the data lag necessary for 2P1 and 1P1, we are looking back at FY20's 3P1. So that's how this kind of flows. This group goes up here, and we track them. And so what we see in 22, they'll get reported in 2P1 and 1P1's measure in FY24. We're following those for that 2-year period. And here, this is kind of estimated. We don't really know for sure exactly when that will occur, but that's kind of depends on when the consolidated annual report opens up from federal officials and things of that. All right, so before we start down this road a little bit, let me just stop and see any questions that you might have so far. Anything else? Okay, so going back to 3P1, I'm not going to go into these in great depth unless you have specific questions, but what we wanted to accomplish with these charts for 3P1, 2P1, and 1P1 is that explicitly spell out how the denominator is calculated, how the numerator is calculated, and then to show the fiscal year that appears in pods, what the cohort fiscal year derives from, when the match begins and when it ends, and then what the last fiscal year. Now, with this one, it's pretty simple. 3P1, we don't have to wait on anything. We can determine that in real time. 2P1 and 1P1 is a little bit more involved, but so here you can see when you look in pods, what fiscal year you're looking at, and then what group of students you're looking at. So like for FY22, that's all the students that were enrolled from July 1st to June 30th of 2022. And so that's how we sort of determine that cohort. But if you look at that denominator, you know, how we were kind of talking about the concentrator definition, this is the exact same thing, just sort of spelled out more specifically, and with some markers about where we're pulling that stuff from in terms of A1 or AC or any of those types of things. Okay. So 2P1 to start, this is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated, because again, when we look at the fiscal year in pods, the fiscal year 22, that's reflective of the reporting cycle. The cohort year goes back to 20, and we're looking at students that were at the institution from July 1st of 19 through 21. And you can see here, what we do is we look and we determine their exit quarter, which year they were successful in, and then we match based off of that. So if you had folks who didn't complete until year 2, we don't match them until the time in which they were exiting from the college, right? So typically that's going to be at least 2 different cohorts that we're matching to see if they show up later on in post-secondary or with wage records. And again, the denominator is just spelling that out again as well, which is specific degree code and what we're doing in terms of the concentrator. And then finally here, this is 1P1 doing the same thing. Over here, this actually gets into what I was just talking a little bit about in terms of the IDS quarter. So like if somebody completed in 20, if they completed in 20, we'd be looking at 2020 Q4 to see if they were employed or in post-secondary. If they completed in 21, we look at the 4th quarter of 2021. This calendar year is not our fiscal years, but that's how that all kind of works out. And then we do the same thing with NSC data. Here's part of, I was talking earlier about that lag. So for the year that we just reported on, that data wasn't available in terms of wage records until June of 2022. So it's 3 quarters from the most recent thing that you need to match against. So we have to at least wait that long before we can get wage records. And back to your earlier question, the IR tool that we have, I think right now it's got, I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years worth of data. We're getting ready to do another run to update it for, I think, maybe 21, 22. But there is a significant lag. But the nice thing about it is we can look at wage earnings, not just in 2 quarters out. We can look at 2 quarters out, 4 quarters out, 8 quarters out. You know, and it's really nice on some of these programs. You can actually see like 4 quarters before the student exited. Here's how much they were making annually, and 12 quarters out. Here's how much they were making. So that's a really nice little feature that tool provides. So high level 20,000 foot view. Just a few things about state data. So we're very fortunate in that we did meet all of our measures for Perkins 5 reporting for this year. Either at, we either exceeded or we met. The only one like here, this yellow, it just represents that the target wasn't met in terms of the exceeding level. But Perkins has a 90% threshold. So as long as you come in within 90%, you're not considered having failed that measure. So as you can see in 3P1, and this is a very small denominator to start with, but in that particular measure, we're within 90% of the established target, which for this reporting cycle is 9.8%. And then, I'm sorry, I just said that backwards. This is the one that we did not meet, I'm sorry. This one did not come in with the 90%, okay? I misspoke there, got ahead of myself. But with this one, that is the only one in 3P1 that we did not meet. Overall, we did. And you can see overall, statewide total is 11.76%. The thing that I would advise you when you're looking at PODS 2.0 and you start to drill into your data, there's two things you want to look at. First and most important is how did you do in terms of the state target, right? But also you can see in PODS, you can see how did the rest of the state perform? Because while we didn't fail to meet this measure, and that was the only group, there are institutions where when you start looking down this list, there are, and sometimes it's because of small numbers, right? It could be there were just a handful of students, and that could be what's going on. But sometimes that's not the case. So, you know, be sure and take a look at that. And sometimes when you see that, it's sort of not just isolated to a single year. It may be sort of an ongoing issue. And that, I think that's a good thing to look at in terms of your PIP, because if it's been a ongoing problem, it might be something that kind of bubbles up to the top in terms of importance. The other thing too, that, this goes back to what we used to say in kind of in the Perkins 4 era, is sometimes if you are looking at, like, you want to raise your overall ALP or your level of performance, it might be that in one subgroup you didn't meet the target, but that subgroup might have such a small number in it. If that subgroup number is accurate, maybe your interventions may be better targeted toward a group where there's a larger number of students, so you're going to have a more meaningful impact on your overall results. So, take that into consideration when you're looking at your data in terms of what your outcomes look like. And this is what I was saying earlier. The green represents that 90% target. And so for 2P1, when we look at success there, we can see there are two groups. And, with the race, ethnicity, American Indian, or Alaska Native, that's a pretty small group. But when we look at males, we can see that they very, very much underperformed compared to females in the most recent academic year. So, of course, we were within 90%. We did meet the overall target for the reporting cycle, but that group did not exceed or did not reach the 100%. And then, again, the same thing here. All targets were met. 2 were within 90%. And you can see here how close they were to the 69.4% target. So what the way that the current POD system is designed is it's really more focused to give you that longitudinal look across 3 years. What we're working on now is we'll still give you the ability to do that, but we're going to have kind of a focus screen that will let you focus on just the most recent year. So that way you don't get lost in all the graphs and charts and all that kind of stuff. And I think that will be helpful to you in terms of isolating in on your KIP and identifying for the most recent group, here's what that looked like. Okay, so let me stop here before we move into PODS 2.0. How am I doing on time? Am I good? Yeah. Let me stop. Any questions about any of the measures, anything like that before we look at PODS 2.0?
I just have a quick one. When you're looking at a program completion, you're just giving them 2 years?
Correct.
So you're assuming they're full-time?
Well, what we do is we say, if in the year that they're in, they had the 12 hours and all those kinds of things, we look and see if they completed in that year, did they complete in the second year? If they didn't, then for the initial base year, it's not counted as a success. Now, what we do see in the data, sometimes it's like some folks will complete like a short-term certificate, or maybe they'll sit out a year and then they'll come back and they may kind of reappear in the cohort again, because now they've gotten back 12 hours. And so it's almost like they go through that process again because they're now in a new part.
I'm just wondering, a part-time person could get the 12 credit hours in the 1.2, but because they're going part-time, they're not going to realistically complete their degree in 2 years if they are degree seekers.
Yeah, that's possible. But do keep in mind, a lot of these CTE certificates are stacked.
For the certificates, yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm just thinking of, programs that just have the plain AAS degree.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the,
That's just a drawback of the current methodology, which is fine.
Yeah, our denominator, our total number of Perkins individuals reported has increased quite a bit, but some of that's due to the adjustment, the way that, before we looked at just like exclusively the A1. We didn't look at the course taking behavior, so that did make some modifications.
So one from the placement.
Yeah.
You're able to identify if the student has, found placement in their field that they've studied through the CPE programs down to a, did you say it?
Well, here's the tricky part about that. This is a complicating thing, and it's not just for Illinois. This is across the country. Most wage records that you are able to retrieve do not identify down to the individual, like, does this employment code match up with this program of study? That's not, it just doesn't match up that way. Oftentimes, like when we get wage records, we can't tell if the person was in full-time, part-time, there's no markers for that. All we know is like in that quarter, here's what their earnings look like. So the short answer to your question is, we are just looking simply at, were they employed in that quarter two post X? That's all we're looking at. And, you know, I know that's been something that's been shared, not just, you know, I've heard it on national calls, folks say like, okay, how do we make sure that this code falls under, and a good example that someone used once is like, someone has a certificate, they complete something in medical, for example. So their employer may be a hospital, but you don't know at that hospital, are they working in the medical field? Are they working in IT? Are they working in food service? You have no idea what they're doing at that sort of institution. So that is one of the drawbacks to wage, the limitations of wage. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and move over to PODS 2.0. A couple of things I would say. As I started out, this is an iterative process, right? So what you see today is not intended to be a final product. It is, it's probably the second or third version. And there's some things right now that you guys can't see. It just hasn't been pushed public, but they're there. They're just sort of behind the scenes. And as I said, our plan is to release sort of in coordination with Tasha and Janelle and their team prior to your allocations, that sort of new screen that will allow you to isolate to just the most recent data. But I would encourage you, and I always say this, and sometimes folks take me up on this, you know, reach out to Michelle, myself, anyone else in the RA team, if you have suggestions or something that would, you know, part of the issue with dashboards, if you ever worked with, is it can do lots of things, but it really depends on what you're wanting it to do. And something that we encounter a lot of times is we have issues where it works if you look at it at this level, but then when you drill down to this level, it starts to show you kind of clunky results because you start to get into really low numbers or zeros and that kind of thing. And so we're trying to experiment with what makes the most sense in terms of charts or visuals. But the most important thing is, did you meet the measure, the three measures? How did you do overall? And then you've got your race, ethnicity, gender, and then the special pops breakout. That's the driver. Did you have?
I just wondered if there was a public place to view like Power BI.
Yes, and I'm gonna, there should be a login that you can go to, and it is still, we still have it password protected. We'll probably be taking that off. Because nothing in there is at there's no PII available, but we'll continue to kind of play around with that. So in terms of this second bullet, I do want to talk about that. Last year, we had plans to share some microdata files back to the colleges, right? And we were going to start out with 3P1. There was a couple of things that sort of set us, where we got sidetracked on that. But our plan is to go back to that and give you your 3P1 cohort of students so that instead of not only seeing at the Power BI level, here's how many, where you'd actually be able to go in and look at a student record and say, here's how that individual was coded, where they coded as economically disadvantaged or whatever the case might be. Because that is something that you already have access to in terms of being able to see student records at the college level, right? The thing that we aren't as quite as, it's not quite as easy for us to share would be the outcomes of 2P1 and especially 1P1. 1P1, once they leave your institution, we have some restrictions about what we could show with wage data or even with the National Student Clearinghouse if they move on. But I think if we give you that 3P1 file, you know, FY23 students, you're going to follow them. We're going to look at them in 23 and throughout 24. And then they will ultimately determine your success for 2P1 and 1P1. Now, I will tell you this, if we give you 3P1, and this, I'm sure this will happen, is as you look at that data, would be fed to your IR staff. if you know that there are certain markers missing from students, we sometimes get requests from folks who will say, we figured out that this isn't right, we need to correct it. Unfortunately, once that data has been verified and submitted by the IR folks, we cannot go back and do that, because once it's all done and packaged up, we start running tons of reports on it. If we go back and change it, then we can't replicate our data, because for like iPads reporting, there's things that we have to go back and report for 8 years worth of outcomes. So we can't change things, but then we can't replicate what we started out with. All right, let me move over to so here's the current PODS 2.0 website. www.2 .org. I think this is in your handout, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And the handout that you have in your packets that breaks out all the stuff that we're talking about is available right here. And then the Perkins 5 dashboard is currently laid out here. This, when we push out the new version, you'll come here to the exact same thing. But it's just what will happen is when you put this.
If you have your device and you want to log in and play around while Dave's talking, on page 7 of your guidelines packet, the username and password is right there. And if you go to the ICCB homepage and then type in PODS in the search bar, it'll pull up this web page. And then you can use the sign in info on page 7 of the guidelines if you want to play around, and if you have your laptop or whatever you don't.
And if you need Wi-Fi, it's UIS guest. It'll just let you in with your email.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So here, what we have right now, what way this will look differently in the coming weeks is probably, I'm thinking somewhere down here, you're going to see a green button. It'll say something like most recent data. And you'll be able to click on that. And then what it'll do is instead of showing you 3 years worth of data, it's going to focus in on just the most recent year. And some of this is already behind the scenes. Part of me wants to show it to you, but it's not ready for prime time, so we can go down there. But let's go ahead and take a look at 3P1. And I do want to point out a couple of things that have come up. So the way that this is laid out, okay, so at the top here, you've got a few filters where you can filter to your specific college. You can filter to career clusters. The foster care, homeless, and parent active duty military, those 3 variables were not introduced in the system until 2019. Those first couple of years, I think there was only like 181 students reported as homeless across the entire state. So just to say those variables, when we introduce a new variable, we know it's going to take a couple of years for colleges locally to work out things to collect it. But those, you can filter on those things currently. And then you can see there the target for 3P1. And then this filtered set total. If you interact with the visuals down below, these numbers are going to adjust, and they're always adjusting to whatever the most recent academic year was. So in this case, it's 3P1 totals for FY22 reporting, right? And then we've got a breakout here of the selected items versus state non-traditional rate. So let's, before I give you a specific example, let me just kind of break out the blocks here. So that first one is to allow you to see whatever you filter to compared to the state. The second one allows you to look at male and females and then what the actual state rate was. You have information here on gender, and then down below, you've got information on all the special populations. Now, I want to point out, because this caused some confusion. First of all, in all of the visuals, now you're going to see 20, 21, and 22. We don't split it like cohort anymore. To avoid the confusion, we just made everything reported. But when you see this light blue, that's saying that that's the percentage for that special pop group. If it says NA, what that's telling you is that that individual is not reported as being a single parent or an English learner, and it shows you the rates there. And the way that the dashboard is set up, everything is a hover. So if statewide, I wanted to know in the most recent year, I just come down to 22, I can look here. When I point at something, it's going to pop up and tell me statewide in 22, English learners had a non-traditional enrollment rate of 13.66%. Statewide, there was 593 students, and 81 of them were non-traditional enrollments. And so if I were to go up and pick a college, I did that, it's going to show me the same thing. Well, let's pick a college so we can kind of put this in context. So let's say, I'll take a look here at Highland, for example. So I'm gonna unselect, I'm gonna go down and pick Highland here. Okay, all right. All right, so, we can see here in the most recent year, what the numbers look like. You can see in 22, 10.2%. So it's, the target was met overall. Statewide, the target, the performance was 11.8%. Now, down here, you see how we have some areas where we've got the little light blue, and then we've got the dark blue. The dark blue again, meaning that there was nobody reported with that specific special pop. So we can see in 22 that we have percentages for both groups. So if I come over and I hover on it, I don't have to dig into it, I can just hover. It will show me. So for Highland, I can see in 22, the rate for individuals who were disabled to be in a non-traditional program was 6.25%, or 1 out of 16 students. Okay. And then if I wanted to compare that against how about the individuals who were not reported as
So that would be
disabled.
the institutional average,
At the institution level, this is at
Okay.
Highlands level.
but the dark blue represents the institutional percentage of students who are disabled.
Yeah, correct. Everything now that we see on the screen, with the exception of the red line here and this red line, all represent Highland specific. Okay, and so, but here's the thing that's problematic, right? So we can see here, and we can see that they started reporting disabled students in 21 and 22. There were none, or actually here, there may have been no one successful, but a better example would be like English learners or like the out of the workforce. You see how here we don't see anything other than the dark blue? That's saying that if you see that for your college, what that's telling you is NA means there are no individuals who are English learners being reported from your institution for those years that you're looking at. Okay. Now, the way we're going to package this a little bit differently with this other visual, so that when you go in, instead of having to hover, it'll just give you more of like your traditional, almost like a spreadsheet where it'll give you numbers and you can see rates, that kind of thing, just to make it a little easier and quicker to digest. But you can look at this, and then if you come over and you go to, maybe you want to jump to 2P1, it will keep the filter that you've applied. And so now I can actually look, and it will show me, again, remember that little sort of cheat sheet that you had that said, okay, so this is 20, 21, and 22, but we know 22's data for 2P1 is that 20 cohort, right? Because we go back and then pick them up and track them across time. This is the reporting year. But here we can see like single parent. If I see that and I say 100%, even with that point, I'm going to know it's got to be a very low number, right? Yeah, 7 students. All of them were flagged as completing, right? And for those who were not single parents, I can see there was 271 total students, 220 were completed. So what we're going to do basically with this other visual is take this 22 here, all of this 22 data, to put it in its own visual. So that way you can still come and look at things longitudinally and see how things were, how you're doing across time. But you can also just hone in on just that most recent year. But as you look at special pop groups, if you look across that and you see that there's areas where you're failing to meet the target, that's really, in terms of your PIP, that's what you're after, whether it's gender, race, or any of the special pops. And then again, the filter will still hold. We go to 1P1. Now, again, see here how it's continued. Let me just point one thing out. See, if we look, I'm gonna go back to 3P1 for just a second. Somebody had a question, so I'm gonna come back to that in just a second. But I'm gonna remove Highlands filter for just a second. And I'm gonna look at 22's data. You see here, in 22, it shows 33,000. This is statewide. Again, we're taking the filter off. Now we're back at the state level. We've zoomed it back up, right? So in 22, we showed a total of 33,025 students statewide. That's the total number of all students who met one of those 2 qualifications to be concentrators. If I go back and I look at 20, I can see that's 36,893. So back in 20, that's important because 20 is where we're pulling the numbers for two P1 and one P1, right? But that number, that 36,893, when I get to two P1, and this holds true for your program too, when I go to 22, that 36,893, see, I see that show up. The reason for that part of this little demonstration here is I want you to think about, like, everyone that is in three P1, you're going to see them continue to show up. And then of the folks that were in three P1 here, you see how there was 27,930 students who completed, or 75.71% of those students completed a certificate. That 27,930, if I go over and look at post-secondary placement, and I look at that group, 27,930, see, we're tracking, you can follow that line all the way through until we get to the final measure. Then that group, we can see of that group, 78.4% was successful in either during post-secondary, subsequent post-secondary, or employment. So you had a question? Someone over here, I thought. Oh, okay. All right. So I know there's a lot going on with visuals. I think that's been one of the criticisms that folks have had. There's like a lot that sort of digest. We've heard you, and so the new partner we're going to push out, we're going to try to simplify it to let you focus in on just the most recent year. But we do want you to have the ability to look at, because two things are important, right? Beat the targets, but also we want to see the lines on all these go up. And, you know, realistically, you know, we know there's a certain point where we kind of hit the ceiling, but that's the general trend that we want to see. And so we want to continue to be able to allow you guys to look at that big picture across time. And if you have any suggestions for us in terms of how to help you do that in an interactive way, you know, certainly shoot them our way. But with that, let me stop. And is there any specific questions I can answer that you'd like to look at? Or just anything else?
So.
Yes.
These are the data that's live and.
Yes, this is live right now. The updated piece I was telling you about, we anticipate that being available either by Friday of next week or the mid part of the week after that. So within today's Wednesday. So within 2 weeks of today, that alternative way will be available. And we can certainly get something out on the list first if we need to, or however you want to do it. So, yes. Yeah, we can send that back. I know we're getting kind of late into the year. I think, you know, what we want to try to do moving forward is as soon as we can get that data finalized and then get it submitted to federal officials, just then give it to you. Because what we don't want to do is sometimes federal officials will come back to us and they'll say, well, we have a question about this, or we're questioning that. And we're always hesitant to give you guys something that there's a possibility we're going to have to change it. But typically, it's been more of explanations. So, you know, I think 3P1 is something that we could give you fairly quickly, but we can give you 3P1 and to start that process. And I would tell you a little bit about the way the file would be laid out and identify the student, and then all race, ethnicity, gender, and then all of these special pops and a marker of how, whether they were marked that way or it was not applicable. That's how that file would work. So if you had 300 students, you get a file back of 3P1, 300 students, all those are marked. And then for that conversation that we were talking about earlier, if you, wait a minute here, I see I've got no single parents and we really had 120, then you know how to talk to your IR folks and make that connection between your divisional data systems or mechanisms to the larger college system. Reach out to you directly? No, reach out to your IR folks. Yeah. Well, and let me add this. But let me clarify one thing about this. I cannot, this part is no joke, because this is real important. Because this happens sometimes, and every time that happens, makes the hair on the top of my head stand up, what's left of it, right? Is we get folks who will transfer this file around through email. This file has PII in it. Do not do that. It's got to be through secured mechanisms. Now, one thing that we could do is we could just give you like the last name, first name, and then a student ID. That reduces the amount of PII that's available, but still, anytime you start looking at markers at the student level, so that's why I say, go to your IR folks, because you have internal methods for transferring data that's secure, that's much better than email. But please do not transfer any of those files via email. you ever find yourself, if you ever get one, immediately delete it and tell whoever sent it, delete it, so. Right? Yes.
See if we're not performing, our performance, indicators are not what they're supposed to be. Where we would do our, performance indicators, action activities for our report and written portion and kind of combination.
Yeah. Todd and Janelle, did you guys hear that?
That's what that
Yeah, so
pertains to. We're not meeting those goals, so that's where we put our activities in there.
for your PIP, any place where when you look at 22 data and you look at gender, race, ethnicity, or any special pop, any place where you're failing to meet what the target was, that's what you're developing your PIP around.
And is it within the 10, is it the yellow? If it's in the green, do we still do it? If it's on that 10%
But
or?
if it's within 90%, do they still? I just had a, so I think one thing that we could do, I'm just.
Right in.
So if you are meeting the indicator, you do not have to do a performance improvement activity for that indicator. You can, so like if you're within the 90%, you're like, I really want to bump that up, I really want to try to do better. Please feel free, you do not have to though. You're only required to do a performance improvement activity if you are not meeting one of those indicators.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Question answered.
I will say this, Doctor, though, that question triggers something in my brain. I think it's a really good idea, and I'm not gonna overpromise here, but I am gonna say this. What might be helpful, since, we haven't pushed this out yet, is in the visual of the most recent year. Any place where you're failing to meet the target, we just have a little line that says PIP. Like that way, when you look at it and you've got just, let's say, all of your 3.1 measures, anything that falls below 100% of the target, you get a little indicator that says PIP. And you know that group needs a PIP.
Like that.
Yeah. And that moves any guess, right? Okay,
We have a question online.
yes.
So we have to be on a PIP if our overall rates are well above the target. But we have one student group that's under ? Even if the student group only has 2 students in it.
So you're looking at the overall for your performance improvement activity. However, if you're not meeting that indicator, that's when you need to dive deep into your data to see what's bringing these numbers down. What groups of students do I need to focus on to try to bump that number up? But again, almost like a best practice, like if there's a significant group of students that even though you're meeting that indicator, but they're still underperforming, you can still address that with, if it's not within the PIP, just within your annual work plan. So, I mean, just because you're not required to do something doesn't mean you shouldn't, right?
I think it might be beneficial if you pointed out on the screen for people who are new to COG data, exactly where they're finding that overall number.
Okay.
I think people are thinking now, you see a target up there at the top, but then they're thinking individual pieces here. We're looking at an overall number, and I think they're getting confused on where to find that.
Okay. So let's do that. All right, so let's, which college should we go to? Since we picked on Highland, let's go to another one.
Joliet.
Joliet, all right. So So our question is, how did we do overall? So for 3P1, if I want to know overall, I'm going to go to the very first box over here. You see, I've got for 22, the red represents the state's rate, how the state performed, and the blue represents how Joliet did. So that's my selected items, and I can see if I hover, and to your point back there, so for example, Joliet, they had 1,481 students, 214 were non-traditional programs, or 14.45%. So based on that, no PIP would be necessary. Now, there may be a.
At the top, not how the state performed, what the target was. The 9.6.
Yeah, yes, that's a good point. This right here these two lines, the one that represents the blue, which is what you've isolated to, in this case, Joliet, that's reflecting the program. The red represents how the state actually performed. So the state, our target was 9.8%, which chances are rates are going to go up. You know, we start out with base rates that are lower, but this is letting you know that the state overall, we did 9.8%, or our target was 9.8%, but we came in well above that. And then Joliet came in even higher than the state in terms of non-traditional enrollment. So, but what it's doing is it's giving you context here, because like, if this state, let's say the target is this, right? And then you run yours and you see that you're at 9.9%. Technically, you met, if I picked a college here and that blue line went to 9.9, you met the target, but you would be below how the state's performing, right? Because now the target's 9.8, doesn't change. That college, we'll call it College X or College Z, because there is actually an X college. But when I say it drops down to 9.9, you're going to see the red line, or the blue line goes to 9.9 here. This red line will stay at 11.8. And that would be telling you that your college is 9.9. It met the target, but it's below how the state's performing. So if you were to come up, the state's 11.8, and you know, 3P1 is a lot harder to control than 2P1 and 1P1 in my opinion. But anyway, yeah, does that help? So this is where you're starting at. And then if we come over to 2P1, same thing here. So again, we're filtered to Joliet. State target, 70.5%, right? State performance, 75.7. Joliet's performance in that measure was 63.3. We got a PIP, right? So we're going to start looking at that. And then if I'm Joliet, I'm going to say, okay, since I'm at 63.3, now I'm going to come down here to 22, and I'm going to start looking. If the new screen wasn't available, I'd come into 22 and I start saying, okay, what group can I design an intervention around that's going to give me the most bang for my buck to raise me from 63.3 up to what the target is. And so then I'm just going to come down here and start looking. And, you know, it could be that it's, you know, system-wide. There might be a group here. Now, like here, even without hovering, I can see here. So like the English learners, they're completing at 78.3%, far above the rest of the group. I can see single parents, they're completing much higher than individuals with a disability or individuals who are economically disadvantaged. And over here, what does this tell us? Since we don't see any of the light blue.
You don't have it.
This tells us that according to the submission from Joliet, there are no students who were classified as out of the workforce. Yes, ding, ding, ding. When secret pride. There is.
Secret about it.
Yeah.
Might be with the edits for the ones on the left.
The NA means that special pop group doesn't, let me think of a better way of saying it. It just simply means, NA means that there are no individuals.
Left, where there's two numbers. So,
Here,
yeah, like what does NA mean on that one?
that means that, so
It's
down
the
here,
college average.
this is your single parent rate. And this NA means for those who are not single parent, here's their rate. Yeah. So it's just those who are not of that special population. Right. All right. Any final questions before I end the baton back to CTE folks? Yeah.
It does bring an interesting point, but maybe it would be helpful instead of using NA, just saying not special pop.
Yeah.
You know, it's just,
Oh,
yeah, but it's not applicable, does it? I mean, it means that, but I'm just saying, you know, it might be confusing. I mean, basically, this is a 1 and 0, it's a binary representation, so.
Just a quick survey here by hands. Does the NA, do you guys find that confusing? Would different verbiage be better? Does the NA think it's okay? How many say NA is okay? You got that? How many would like to pick something not special?
I would say that.
That's an easy fix for us. I mean, we just go with NA just kind of where we not applicable. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's what the A1 says, right?
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you guys. If you have any suggestions, please let us know, especially when we push out the new screen. But appreciate it. Hopefully you find Fox 2.0 helpful.
It was very nice.
5, we're gonna come back together to 2:25 sharp, then we have one work group activity. Very worthwhile, to move around, you have to leave the crowd, like, I understand. 2:25 sharp, be here.
Is it 2:25 right now? Okay.
All right, so we're winding down to the end of the day. And I'm gonna modify this activity just a little bit, just because we don't have a lot of space to move around. So these are peer-led roundtable topics. The activity was gonna be, per table, move around and discuss different topics at different tables. But what I'm asking you to do is just amongst your tables, pick one of these topics that resonates the most with your table and discuss it. And we'll just do 15 minutes to talk, and then we'll be able to let you all out a little early. Yeah, I'm sorry, this is in your packet, and then the topics are all.